Hello guys, welcome to the channel. Today we are talking about what if Issei was the son of Great-red and Ophis. Part 4. Since the dawn of time, Ophis and Great-red have been at odds with one another. But, what happens when through an inexplicable twist of fate, a new being was born through their conflict? Follow Issei, the third dragon god, on his journey as the world will not be same again. If you enjoy the video, please like and subscribe, it will help us make more videos for you. Now let's begin. As the gang exited the church, happy to have successfully saved Issei, said person suddenly recalled a crucial fact that she forgot to address with everything that has happened. Something wrong, Issei-chan? Matsuda asked, having noticed her internal dilemma. This caused everyone to stop and look at her. It's just while I am very thankful to everyone for saving me, what happens to me now? I have nowhere else to go. Issei looked down in sadness. It was true that she had nowhere to return to. The church exiled her for her deed of healing a devil, accusing her of being a witch. There is no way she could return to them. That is how she ended up with Rainier and the fallen angels who found her. Everyone felt very bad for the poor nun, a few of them understanding how it feels to have no place to call home, nowhere to belong. Before anybody could say anything, Rias stepped forward and placed her hand over Issei's shoulder, causing said person to look up. Rias could tell from her expression that she was holding back the tears that threatened to come out. If that is the case, then what would you say to becoming a part of my peerage, my family? She asked Issei, who lifted her head in surprise. What? Rias found her expression to be very cute, but it did not deter her from stopping. Since you said you had no place left to go to, I would like to offer you a place in my family. You would get to hang out with Matsuda and Issei more often and would get to experience new things. I would have to ask Sana to transfer you to our school, but I'm sure she will do it in exchange for a favor, so that is not an issue. The choice is yours and you can take as much time as you need if you'd like. If you do not accept the offer, then I will take no offense. I'll even ask my brother to see if he could get in contact with Heaven's leaders to help you out. If you do accept, then I can promise you that you will never be alone again. Rias finally finished and waited for her answer. The last bit Rias said really resonated with Issei core because she was isolated all her life. After so many years of being isolated and her teachings, due to her status as a holy maiden, Issei had to withhold many desires during her childhood. Deep down, she wanted to be able to experience things other girls her age did. She wanted to be able to go to school and be able to make many friends. She wanted to eat out with friends and family. She wanted to go to the amusement parks. She wanted to be able to share pleasant and happy memories with cherished people. However, her duty to the church and the Lord kept her from doing so, and now Rias is offering her a chance to live out these experiences. She already considered herself blessed to have been able to befriend Matsuda and Issei, and now she had the chance to fulfill her deepest desires she couldn't do in the past. Taken into account all these facts made her reply very obvious. If you would have me, then yes, I would love to. She answered, nodding to Rias, who seemed absolutely happy at her answer. At this time, Issei stepped forward. Are you sure about this, Issei? If you do become a devil, you would not be able to pray to God anymore? He asked with a worried tone, mostly on her behalf. Despite being excommunicated from the church, she had always kept her faith with her and prayed to her Lord practically every day, that it has become a part of her. So, if she were to become a devil, she would have to abandon what is effectively a part of her being, and Issei just wanted to make sure she was okay with it. He received his answer in the form of a smile by Issei, who looked straight at him. Yes, Issei-san, I'm sure. I truly appreciate your concern, but, for as long as I can remember, I have been isolated in the church due to my duties as a holy maiden. I envied how so many people talked about how much fun they had playing sports, going to school and do all sorts of things. It is not as though I did not enjoy what I was doing. I felt blessed to be able to use the gift God gave me to heal so many people. However, a small part of me longed to be able to experience things outside the walls of the church, and I believe this is my chance to do so. Even though I may never be able to pray to the Lord again, His teachings will always remain with me in my heart, and that is all I really need. Seeing that it looked like she was determined to go through with this, Issei relented. All he wanted to make sure of was that she wanted this from the bottom of her heart and not from being forced with no options. However, it seemed to be the former, so he was happy about that. Although none was happier than Rias, judging by the big smile on her face. I see. In that case, allow to give you my gratitude for accepting my offer. I know it could not have been easy for you to give up the ability to pray, which is why I will do everything in my power to make sure that your choice is one you will never regret. Let me be the first to welcome you to my peerage and my family. She extended her hand in greeting, which Issei took. Thank you very much. Despite being devils, I can tell that you are all very nice people, so I am going to be in your care. So how do we do this? She inquired Rias, since she had no idea how the process worked. You don't need to worry. You can simply take a seat and I will take care of everything. It's actually a very simple and quick process, Rias explained. May I make one last prayer before we do this? She asked Rias, who simply nodded. She wasn't going to deny her this request. Of course, you can. Please go ahead, and when you are finished, we can begin. Issei folded her hands in prayer and closed her eyes as she prayed to her Lord, thanking him for all that she had. Despite having a rough upbringing, she never blamed God for her misfortune and always turned to His teachings whenever she felt sad. If anything, it was only due to these series of unfortunate events that she was able to meet Issei and Matsuda, her first true friends, and now she had the opportunity to live the normal life she always dreamed of having, so she thanked the Lord Almighty for this blessing. After finishing her prayer, she turned around and told Rias she was finished. I'm done. Very well, in that case, please take a seat anywhere and we will begin the process. Issei nodded and took a seat on a chair nearby. Will it hurt her? Issei inquired, worried about possible harm to befall her. However, his worry was quelled when Rias shook her head. No, as I said, the process is simple and painless. I can assure you, Issei. I would never do anything to harm her. Issei nodded and backed down when Rias assured him. He trusted her. He then saw Rias take out what seemed to be the chessboard set that contains her remaining devil pieces. Rias started contemplating which piece to use on Issei. Her knight piece would be useless since Issei wouldn't gain any benefits from the speed increase granted by the knight, so her bishop and rook piece remained. She deliberated on whether or not to use the rook piece, considering that Issei was part dragon and would greatly benefit from the boost. However, she quickly dismissed it due to Issei's personality. She wasn't much of a fighter but more of a healer due to her twilight healing, so she would best fulfill the bishop's role, which is to support the team from behind. Having made her decision, she then took out her bishop from her set and moved it towards Issei's chest. In the name of Rias Gremory, I order you, Issei Argento, to be reborn as my bishop. Dedicate your life to me as my servant and family. She recited the incantation and soon, her bishop piece started to glow, causing Issei to close her eyes at the sudden brightness as the bishop piece slowly entered her body, causing Issei's body to give off a glow. After the piece finished merging, the light died down, indicating a successful conversion. Rias breathed a sigh of relief when she saw that she had successfully managed to convert Issei. She had to admit that after her attempt with Issei had failed, her confidence in her abilities had somewhat waned to the point she feared she would not be able to reincarnate any dragon, but it looks like her worries were put to rest. Is it over?" asked Issei, who opened one of her eyes, wondering if the process was over. "Yes, it is, Issei-chan. You are now my bishop, so once again, I would like to welcome you to my family," Rias said with a smile. Issei relaxed as she opened her eyes. "Thank you, Rias-sama." Issei thanked her. "Please, you don't need to call me Sama. I may be your king, but I would prefer if my cute little Kuhase would address me more casually. Since you will soon be joining our school, I would like it if you would call me Bachao or Senpai as the other do," Rias said with a wave of her arm. Issei nodded. "Yes, Rias Bachao. Although I don't really feel any different," Issei said, examining herself to see if there were any changes to her being, but found none. This caused Rias to let out a small chuckle. "Oh my, did you expect to grow horns and a tail?" "How adorable," Rias joked, causing Issei to let out a small blush. "While you don't get those, try focusing a bit of power on your back." Following Rias' advice, Issei poured a bit of power of her back, and then she heard something pop out, making a swoosh sound. She turned around to see two bat-like wings coming out of her back. She started examining them in awe, seemingly looking very excited. She then bolted towards Issei and Matsuda. "Issei-san, Matsuda-san, look, I have wings," she shouted in excitement at the two as she seemed to be bouncing up and down. Despite being a devil, she looked more like a little angel, thought the two of them as they saw her acting all excited. Her bright expression was enough to put a smile on their faces. "Yeah, you do. You look like an angel," Issei-chan said Matsuda with a grin on his face, causing a small blush to appear on Issei. Thank you, Matsuda-san." She fidgeted, not used to having people compliment her so truthfully. "Now, there is the issue of where Issei-chan will be living in." They were interrupted by Rias, who raised the important issue of living quarters for Issei. Matsuda would have offered for her to stay at his place, but he needed to ask permission first from his mother, although he was pretty sure she would be delighted to have her over at their place. She always did want to have a daughter to spoil. But, before he could say anything, Issei stepped forward. "She can live with me and my family. My house has a spare room that she could use, so we definitely have the space to accommodate her," he said as everyone turned his attention to him. "Are you sure that's all right? Is your family going to be okay with that?" Rias asked Issei with a tinge of worry in her tone. Her worry was mostly for how his parents would react to Issei being a half-dragon. She didn't know how dragons treated hybrids, but, in most cases, hybrids were despised amongst their kind. Her best friend was almost killed by her own relatives for being a half-fallen angel if she and Agrippa had not intervened at the right time. Her own bishop, a half-vampire, was despised amongst his own race with extreme prejudice and was constantly abused, even by his own family, and as much as she hated to admit this, even the Devil Society shunned halflings, believing them to be a stain in their society as well as inferior to pure-blooded devils. In fact, most of the extinct families aren't truly extinct, since there exists half-devils who are descendants of said households. One only had to look at her cousin Serog's peerage to find such descendants. Unfortunately, they were still greatly despised due to their mixed heritage and did not have a place in the devil community. Heck, even reincarnated devils that were turned devils by the evil peace system, a system that was designed to prevent their kind from extinction, were looked down upon by high-class devils. It was a very sad thing for Rias. Anyways, the fact was that she was worried over the safety of her newly acquired bishop and wondered how his family would treat her, despite being a half-breed. Of course, it's all right, Rias. My family would gladly welcome her with open arms, he told her, making her sigh in relief, alleviating any worries she may have had. It was then supported by her own queen, who interjected, I can also vouch for them, Rias. His parents are truly kind-hearted people, and I know that they will treat our little Aisha as if they were their own. She will be well taken care of and extremely safe. With added confirmation from Akeno, Rias nodded and agreed to let Aisha live with Issei. Very well, although we should probably ask the opinion of the person in question. Aisha-chan, would you be okay with living with Issei-kun, or would you prefer different accommodations? Rias asked Aisha, waiting to give her the best possible accommodations, although since she considered him a friend, she doubted she would reject it. I don't mind, but is it really okay? She asked nervously to Issei, who smiled at her reaction. Of course, it's okay, Aisha-chan. You are a dear friend, and I know for a fact that my family will not mind you living with us, he said, patting her head, hoping to help her relax, which seemed to work as her body seemed to stop fidgeting. Now that this has been settled, I believe it is time to go home. I will contact Sana to let her know what transpired here, and see we will take care of all the damages, Rias said. Everyone nodded and prepared to leave. Issei was wondering how he would explain everything to his parents. He was sure that they would not mind his decision of having Aisha live with them, but he needed to give them an explanation. Thinking of his parents suddenly reminded him of a conversation he had with his parents a while back, and this was as good of a time as any to figure it out. He suddenly stopped and called out to her, Aisha. Hearing her name called out, she turned around to face Issei. Yes, Issei-san, is everything all right? She also stopped walking, seeing him taking a stand. Everyone else did the same. Yes, everything is okay. I just remembered something and I wanted to ask you a question, answered Issei. Please go ahead. I will try to answer to the best of my abilities. Thank you. I was just wondering, if by any chance, you are aware of what kind of dragon you are? Issei asked his question, catching the attention of everyone else. It seems that with everything that happened, they never got to ask her what type of dragon she was. Rias also was very interested in knowing this fact. Therefore, everyone turned their attention to Aisha, anxiously awaiting her answer. I see. However, I'm sorry to say, Issei-san, that I have no idea what type of dragon I am. My caretaker had always warned me to never reveal to others my heritage. She was afraid because she knew that the church would not take well to a dragon amongst their midst. Unfortunately, I never got the chance to ask her what kind of dragon I was. She passed away shortly when I was 4 years old. Since then, I've been doing my best to ensure that no one figured out my identity, just like I promised her, she explained to them. The last part stated in a sad tone, reminiscing about the nun who took care of her when she was but an infant. I see, was all he could say, seeing that this must have been a touchy subject given her downcast expression. So he tried to divert the subject. In that case, would you be interested in figuring out, he asked her. Was all she could ask as she raised her head. Her sorrowful expression switching into one of confusion, as she had no idea how it was possible. Is it even possible to know? She inquired, receiving a nod from Issei. Of course, it is. All that is required is for me to take a look at your wings. Most dragons are easily identifiable by the color of their wings. For instance, a flame dragon would be red while a blizzard dragon would be light blue. During my training, my sensei taught me about all species of dragons and how to recognize them, so by looking at your wings, I should be able to determine what kind of dragon you are, which will definitely be beneficial. Issei explained. Aisha seemed to want to ask something only to be stopped by Issei, who raised his hand. And before you ask, the process is actually really simple. It's pretty similar to how you activated your devil wings. Simply focus on your back and will your wings to appear. Plus, it should be easier than manifesting your devil wings because you were born a dragon, so even though you never developed your dragon abilities, it should come to you instinctually since you were born a dragon. Aisha paid close attention to Issei's explanation. She could not deny that a part of her was interested in knowing what type of dragon she was. How could she not? It was a part of herself that she had to deny for as long as she could remember. Part of the Lord's teaching involved embracing oneself and accepting everything about oneself. How could she proclaim herself to be a devout following of the Lord's teaching if she did not embrace everything about herself? At the time, she had no choice out of fear of prejudice or exile, but now Issei is giving her the opportunity to learn about her other half. To be able to fully embrace and accept herself just as her Lord taught them. There was no way she could let such an opportunity slip through her grasp. All right, I'll do my best. Issei nodded. Very well. So, like I previously said, just focus a bit of power on your back in order to will your wings to come out. She followed his instructions and once more felt extra limbs coming out of her backs. She turned her head around to look at the new appendages that sprout from her back and was very surprised. Just like her devil wings, they appeared bat-shaped, although a bit bigger than her devil wings, but what caught her eye was that her wings were a beautiful emerald color just like her eyes, and she could not help but awe at her marvelous wings. In a way, it felt as though she were reunited with a former friend, which isn't entirely wrong. There was also something else that intrigued her, but before she could think about it, she heard various reactions from everyone else. Wow, Aisha-chan, your wings look absolutely beautiful. Rias was the first to comment on her wings. Akeno nodded as to confirm as well. Ara, indeed I have to agree with you, Rias. They are very lovely. Didn't expect that from a dragon, although since it's Aisha, I believe it is a given. Oh my god, ow. I have to admit, Aisha-chan, you look absolutely divine and beautiful, complimented Matsuda. Very pretty. Even the silent Koneko voiced out her thoughts and admitted that her wings were magnificent. Aisha, not used to having so many honest praises, started fidgeting and blushing at the same time. Thanks. She muttered nervously. Impossible. All of them turned their attention towards Issei, who was the source of the voice, only to be caught in surprise. Issei's current facial expression was one of extreme shock. He even seemed to be a bit shaken. They honestly had never seen such a reaction out of him. The one most worried, however, was Akeno, who stepped forward and grabbed his arm. Issei. Is everything all right? She asked. Her tone clearly etched in worry. Her touch seemed to have shaken him off of his reverie as he looked and noticed that everyone was worried about him. Taking a deep breath to calm himself, he returned his gaze back to Akeno and smiled. I'm okay, Akeno, he said, caressing her cheek to appease her nerves, which seemed to work. He didn't mean to make her and the others worry, but it just showed how much of a shock it was to him to learn about Aisha's nature. He still couldn't believe it. Are you sure you are all right, Issei-kun? This time, it was Rias who posed the question. Yes, I am fine, Rias. Sorry to have worried you. he answered her. Issei, you are a fairy dragon. He revealed her species to everyone, although it seemed no one here had any clue what that was. A fairy dragon. I've never heard of that type of dragon before, said a confused Rias who couldn't seem to recall any mention of such a dragon during her studies. Issei nodded. I am not surprised that you do not know. It's the reason I was so shocked at the beginning, because fairy dragons were one of the species of dragons long thought extinct. He revealed, making everyone gasp in shock. Extinct? You serious, man? Inquired Matsuda, who received a nod from Issei. Positive. Fairy dragons were renowned for their superior healing capabilities that surpassed even those of the phoenix tears. Just like the tears, they are capable of regenerating a person's injuries and health as well as reattaching a severed limb. However, unlike phoenix tears, fairy dragons were capable of not only healing blood loss but also capable of restoring lost limbs, which phoenix tears are not able to do. In addition, these abilities could be used repeatedly without limit compared to the phoenix tears, which have a limited amount of supply due to the difficult procedure needed to create it. It was even speculated that the original fairy dragons could even be able to resurrect someone shortly after death. Unlike most dragon kind who were engines of destructions, they were masterful healers who enjoyed peace. Many revered their abilities, but there were also many who felt threatened by such power. It was due to this unparalleled ability that caused them to be hunted down by various pantheons, leading them to be one of the first species of dragons to become extinct. It's a truly sad tale. From what my sensei told me, the last fairy dragon was killed over a century ago by a powerful evil dragon. The fact that Issei exists proves that the dragon must have had a child who must have remained hidden. This is astonishing news, and the reason I was so surprised earlier. Never in my wildest dreams did I imagine that you were a fairy dragon, Issei-chan. You even possess the Twilight Healing Sacred Gear in you. Seems like fate. As happy as I am right now to learn of this, it does pose a small problem. I'm afraid of what could happen to Issei should this knowledge be spread, which is why I need to ask you all a huge favor. Please, if at all possible, could you keep Issei's identity a secret from your superiors? You can tell them that she is half dragon to satisfy their curiosity, but please keep it a secret that she is the last remaining fairy dragon. He requested of them. His focus was mainly on Rias, since he knew that as the king of the peerage as well as heir to the grimoire, she would be the one to notify them. Seeing his gaze directed at her, she answered for her peerage. If it will help keep your mind at ease, then I don't really mind doing so. I understand that you are looking out for Issei's safety, and I also will never allow any harm to come to her. Although, please trust me when I say that my brother and the other Maos are really trustworthy, and I know they would never bring her any harm regardless of who she is. Issei, for his part, did not doubt her words. In fact, both Tanin and Barakiel both explained to him that the current Maos were kind-hearted and respectable rulers, so if they trusted them then he knew he could place his faith in them. However, I do not doubt the truth in your words, Rias. There is no doubt in my mind that the Maos are truly respectable people worthy of my trust. However, your counsel is another matter entirely. If all the talks I hear about them is true, then their malicious pride would never allow someone of Issei's capabilities to exist should they learn of Issei's heritage. They would consider it a blow to their pride knowing that someone's healing ability surpasses their phoenix tears they are so proud of. They may try to use her for their own selfish purposes, or even worse, let outside forces know of her existence to have them deal with her. In this case, I doubt the Maos would be able to intervene without the risk of civil war between them. Even if he is your brother, do you really think he would risk the lives of thousands of your people for the life of a single being? especially considering you are still recuperating from your losses of the previous war. And even if he does, I doubt the other three would so willingly help even if it's for you. In addition, I don't want to sound rude, but even you could not intervene in Aisha's rescue for fear of reopening hostilities between the factions, which could ultimately lead to another war. So, if even you couldn't act, then there is no way the Devil Kings will intervene and cause a civil war that may cost thousands of innocent life for an unknown dragon. Issei finished explaining. Rias seemed astounded by not only his wisdom but also what seemed to be a good understanding of their devil society. All the arguments he just made had valid points and there was no way for her to refute them. It was true that the council only cared about themselves and their so-called pure blood status. She knew firsthand how far they were willing to go to preserve pure bloods. Her unwanted marriage to Risa Phoenix is proof of that. Their pride blinded them to many things and they even treated reincarnated devils as filth. If they found out about Aisha, then they might decide to experiment on her to see if they can harness her abilities for themselves without caring about her wishes. They were indeed true devils. That is why I believe you should hold back on revealing such knowledge in order to prevent such a scenario from occurring. You won't technically be lying since Aisha is a dragon, but you will simply not tell them what species she is. Her inner thoughts were interrupted once again by Issei, who continued giving his opinion. It seemed he was finally done talking and now waited for an answer. I understand. If they ask me about her origins, I can simply say that she used to be a nun and was a half-dragon. They probably won't care much after that anyways. Rias replied with a nod of her head. Thank you very much, Rias. He thanked her sincerely with a bow of his head. Don't worry about it. Like I said earlier, I would do everything in my power to keep my peerage safe. Anyways, it seems everything is resolved, so I think it's about time we all go home. I will contact Sana and let her know of what transpired here, as well as ask her to make the necessary paperwork for Aisha to transfer to school. I'll see you all tomorrow in that case. Yes, Bachao all but Aisha replied. Everyone went their separate ways as Issei and Aisha were making their way to Issei's place. Although one look at Aisha and Issei could tell that she seemed tense based on the way her body seemed to be fidgeting a bit and how timid she seemed. He guessed that she may have been anxious about meeting his parents or something, so he tried to calm her down. You don't need to worry too much. I can promise you that my parents are kind and understanding people. Once I explain to them your situation, I have no doubt that they would let you live with us for as long as you need to. Eh? Oh no, she answered rapidly, waving her hands. I'm sure your parents are very nice people, so I'm not worried about that. It's just that this is the first time I'm going to a friend's house, so it's a new thing for me. Sorry if I caused some misunderstanding, she said before bowing in apology. It took a while for Issei to recall how Aisha had lived a sheltered life during her childhood, isolated from the world, due to her status as a holy maiden. He giggled before answering her. It's no problem, Aisha. Eventually, they arrived at the front door of Issei's house. Well, Issei said to Aisha, his face laced with a smile, you ready? Aisha swallowed nervously, then took a deep breath, evidently trying to steel her nerves and not fully succeeding. I'm ready, she said before Issei opened his front door. I'm home, he shouted, sensing his parents were at home. Aisha followed right behind him as she scanned her surroundings. She was a bit surprised to find out that the house they lived in seemed normal. From all the legends surrounding dragons, she kind of pictured some luxurious castle filled to the brink with treasures collected over the years, given how dragons were depicted to have a love for treasures. Instead, his home seemed to be a standard small home that has all the basic necessities. "Oh Issei, welcome home." Aisha turned her attention to the owner of said voice and she could not help but stare at or at the beautiful women standing in front of her. Oh my god, ow, she's so beautiful. She couldn't help but be entranced by the person in front of her as she rubbed her headache due to having spoken the Lord's name. "Hello Mom," Issei greeted her, causing Aisha to go wide-eyed at the person's identity. "TT, this is Issei's mother." She couldn't believe that the person in front of her was Issei's mother. Not only did she look so incredibly young, but she was by far the most beautiful woman she had ever laid eyes on. A perfect frame that every woman in the world would no doubt kill to possess. Both Rias and Akeno were both extremely beautiful women that would even make all models extremely jealous. Yet, their beauty seemed average when compared to the living goddess in front of her. Despite feeling awe at Issei's mother, some small part of her seemed to be absolutely terrified of her. It might be her innate dragon instincts inside of her that seemed to warn her that the being in front of her was not one to be trifled with. She is probably even stronger than Issei, as hard as that is to believe. This is probably the first time she ever felt such fear. The only time she felt anything close to this was during her time at the church when His Eminence Vasco Strada came to visit them. Despite his very friendly nature, he possessed a very imposing muscular frame and his very presence seemed to inspire both respect and fear. Some described him as the world's strongest man who stood alone as humanity's peak. Yet, she could somehow tell that even Vasco Strada paled in comparison to the dragoness in front of her, and this scared her a lot. She never noticed that she unconsciously moved behind Issei the moment fear overcame her. Ophis, however, noticed her motion and realized that Issei brought a guest home. "Did you bring someone over?" she asked curiously, trying to take a good look at the person who hid behind her son. It took a while for Issei to notice that Aisha hid behind him like a scared little puppy. An action that he found extremely adorable. He patted her head, causing her to look up at him, and he smiled to let her know that it's all right. "Yes, let me introduce you. Her name is Aisha Argento," he said as he moved out of the way so his mother can take a closer look at her. "Aisha, this is my mother," he introduced her. It is a pleasure to meet you," Aisha bowed nervously as she greeted Ophis. A gesture that Ophis found adorable as she looked at Aisha with a smile. "Same here. I take it this is the dragoness you were talking about earlier," she inquired at Issei, who nodded at her inquiry. "Yes, she is the one. I wanted to ask you something. Is Dad home yet? I would rather have both of you here so not to repeat things again afterwards," he asked, looking around to see if his dad was here. Ophis sighed. "Yes, your father is in the garage toying with that hunk of junk he calls a vehicle. I really don't see the need for such a thing considering we can simply teleport anywhere we want. It's you who can't appreciate the wonders created by humans." They all turned towards the newly heard voice, which turned out to be Great-red, who came out of the garage when he felt his son arrive home. Luckily, before their little dispute could escalate, he noticed the little girl next to his son and decided to give his greetings. "Well, hello there, little one. I'm Issei's father. It's a pleasure to meet you," he introduced himself. "Hello, it's a pleasure to meet you as well. My name is Aisha Argento," she introduced herself nervously. "Ah, you must be the dragoness I kept hearing about from Issei," Great-red stated, causing Aisha to go wide-eyed in surprise. "You could tell I'm part dragon," she said, causing him to chuckle. "I could tell due to your aura. It radiates the essence of both human and dragon, so it wasn't too hard to deduce it." "Really? It took me a while to figure out she was a dragon, replied Issei to his father's inquiry. Ha ha ha, don't worry kiddo. You'll learn it eventually, he said, patting the back of his son. Anyways, let's all take a seat. I believe you wanted to talk to the both us. Issei nodded and they all made their way to the living room where they each took a seat. Issei and Aisha sat near each other while Ophis and Great-red sat across from them. Issei then proceeded to explain the series of events that occurred with Aisha. Aisha also supplemented her version with a recollection of her past. However, the greatest surprise they received was when he revealed Aisha's identity as a fairy dragon. Now that was a shocker. Seriously, of all kinds of dragon she could be, I never expected a fairy dragon. Last I heard, they went extinct a couple of hundreds of years ago. Tanin go nuts when he hears of this. Have you ever met one, Dad? Issei asked his father, who rubbed his chin as he thought about any encounter. Well, I have met the primordial ancient fairy dragon once thousands of years ago, but it was a very brief encounter since I minded my own business. Great-red answered. So have I. In the past, I encountered a fairy dragon and asked it to join me, but she refused on account of not wanting to spill unnecessary bloodshed, Ophis added in. Issei nodded as he continued his tale. After Rias Buchau talked about living arrangements for Aisha, I offered to have her live with us. Is that all right? He finished retelling the story by asking his parents the most important question. Of course, we don't mind. She can stay here as long as she needs to. Great-red immediately answered without hesitation, with Ophis agreeing with him. A few tears escaped from Aisha's eyes as she bowed down in gratitude to them. Thank you very much for your kindness. I really appreciate it. She lifted her head and smiled at the two. She was so adorable that Ophis got up from her seat and embraced her, which startled her as she did not expect such a gesture. We are definitely keeping her, was all she said. We have a spare room, so there is no issue. Still, for that old man's factions to have fallen so far as to excommunicate a nun whose only crime was to have healed someone in need, even if he was a devil. What a joke. Great-red was disgusted at the fact that Aisha had to experience such sorrow, all because of the fact that she could heal devils. Aisha, after separating herself from Ophis, looked at Great-red with a gleam in her eye. Why you speak as if you met the Lord? Have you met him? The gleam suddenly quickly turned into awe at the fact that the men before her might have the God of the Bible. What a blessing that would be! Seeing her enthusiasm caused Great-red to let out a small giggle. Well, you could say that I've met him, but that was very long ago. However, we aren't exactly on the friendliest of terms. He doesn't really like our kind due to the events that occurred on Eden. He just started spouting some random crap before attacking me all of a sudden. His statement caused Issei to nearly choke while Aisha looked at him with extreme shock. You never told me that. Issei almost shouted at his father, unaware that such a thing took place. Yet, his father casually waved his arm. Don't worry about it. Barely made a scratch. Anyways, when he saw that his attacks weren't effective, he simply left, and it's a good thing too, since I was in the middle of coming up with a super amazing stunt to pull off. Great-red seemed caught in nostalgia at all the times he performed stunts in the dimensional gap. He still does it, but less frequently now. Why you are stronger than TT the Lord. You must be a very powerful dragon. Aisha stuttered nervously, and no one could blame her. To hear that he could shrug off the attacks of the most exalted being she ever knew was a real shocker, to say the least. Oh, it's true we haven't really told you who we are yet. You seem like a trustworthy person, and if you are going to be living with us, then it's only we tell you about us, although I'll ask that you keep what we tell you a secret. Can you do that? Issei nodded her head, accepting his request. Very well. I am Great-red and the person beside me is Ophis. Great-red properly introduced himself and his wife, waiting for Issei's response. Issei simply tilted her head as if she had no idea who they were, which was a crazy notion. You do know who we are, correct? Great-red asked, just to be sure, still not believing that she hasn't heard of them. No, very powerful dragons. She tilted her head. At her seemingly innocent response, Great started to laugh hysterically. Bway ha ha ha! He started slamming his hands on his feet as he could barely contain himself. How long has it been since I've met someone who hasn't even heard of us? You have definitely made my day, little one. We are definitely keeping her. Great-red said, wiping of a straight hair that resulted from him laughing hysterically. Anyways, both Ophis and I are what you would call dragon gods. Oh, I recall you used to work at a church, correct? In that case, I am the dragon of the apocalypse recorded in the Book of Revelation. Ophis is the Ouroboros, the dragon god of infinity. Does that answer your question? This caused the reaction he expected from Issei. GG gods, then that's Issei. She looked towards Issei, who smiled and nodded at her. Yes, I am also a dragon god. Not sure about a title though. People keep giving me new ones every time. Issei, for her part, seemed to be at a loss for words. They were dragon gods, which means that they could be considered royalty. Should she bow to them out of respect? She wanted to do that, but seeing the motion, Ophis interrupted her. You don't have to bow or anything. Dragons don't really care for formalities. Oh, I see. Sorry. Issei apologized. Grumble. They all heard the sound of stomach grumbling, and it seemed to come from their guest, who turned bright red in embarrassment, causing them all to laugh out loud. Well, how about we continue this over dinner? Ophis suggested. Everyone nodded as they made their way to the table, with Ophis going to the kitchen and pick up food. They all shared stories, and before Issei knew it, she was comfortably talking without a hint of nervousness. She laughed at Great-red's antics, Issei's mishaps during training, and Ophis reprimanding the both of them. They soon heard the phone ringing. Don't worry, I'll get it. Issei got up from his seat and made his way to the living room where the phone resided. He picked up the home. Hello. Oh, good evening, Issei, he heard an all too familiar voice. Rias. Indeed, the one who called him was none other than Rias Gremory, even though he doesn't recall ever giving her his home number. While I don't mind you calling home so late, how did you come by this number? I don't recall giving you the number, he asked her. Oh, I got your number from Sana. The student council has access to every personal file of all students in the academy, and this was the number registered as your home phone number. She answered casually. I see. In any case, what's up? I called you to let you know that I talked to Sana and got Issei enrolled in the academy. She starts school tomorrow and she will be in the same class as you and Matsuda. I figured she would feel more at ease with people she knew, at least for her first year in school. By the way, how is she? She asked, wanting to know how her new bishop was doing, causing Issei to smile. She is fine, Rias. My parents loved her and had no issues letting her live with us. We are currently having dinner and Issei seems to be having a great time. Issei answered her. Oh, I see. Sorry for the interruption then. Rias apologized, feeling bad for having interrupted his meal. It's not a problem. Thank you very much for the info and I will relay it to Aisha as soon as possible. Issei didn't mind it and promised to let Aisha know about school. He was sure she would be thrilled. All right. Let me thank you once more for all that you have done. You have helped us deal with the fallen angels and even offered Aisha a place to stay. I appreciate everything you've done, so on behalf of Sana and myself, we thank you for the aid. Also, please give thanks to your parents for their hospitality for Aisha. Rias thanked him. Of course. Good night, Rias. See you tomorrow. Issei bid her a good night, which Rias reciprocated. Have a good night as well, Issei. Rias hung up shortly afterwards as Issei made his way back to the table. Everyone turned their attention to him. It's nothing. It was our club president, Rias Gremory. She called to let me know and to tell you, Aisha, that she got you enrolled into our school and that you will start tomorrow. From her expression, he could tell that she was very excited about the prospect of going to school. An experience she could not participate in during her days at the church. He was happy for her. In any case, after he explained their discussion, they went right back to dinner. All in all, it was a blast, and eventually night came and it was time to go to bed. Mostly for Issei and Aisha, who had school the following day. Issei showed Aisha to the guest quarters, which was pretty much the room right next to his own and right across his parents'. Although his parents very rarely sleep here, preferring to sleep either in Tanin's territory or sometimes the dimensional gap. All right, Aisha. Here is your room. If you ever need anything, my room is right next to yours, so feel free to ask me anything you need. Issei told her. Thank you very much, Issei-san. She thanked him with a small bow of the head. Don't mention it. Have a good night, Aisha-chan. He wished her a good night, turning back towards his door. However, before he could take a step, he felt his lower body being embraced. He looked back to see Aisha had indeed embraced him. Her head tucked in his back. Thank you, for everything. He heard her say. He patted her head. It was my pleasure, Aisha. We are fellow kin, even if you are only a halfling, and I will always help out another member of my species. But, even if you weren't, I would have still saved you because you are my friend. Also, you should also share your gratitude with Matsuda, who was the first to charge forward to save you. He cares greatly for you, and from what I could see, you also care a great deal for him. He winked to her, making her cheeks flush bright red, but he felt her nod her head, confirming his thoughts. Anyways, I believe it's time for both of us to go to bed. We have to wake up early tomorrow so we do not arrive late at school. Wouldn't want you to arrive late on your first day in, he joked a little at the end, making her giggle. All right, good night, Issei-san. She bid him good night. Good night, Aisha, he replied as they both entered their room and, after changing, went straight to bed. Beep 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 beep, Issei hit the snooze button on his alarm clock, silencing it. Waking up from his sleep to a brand new morning, he yawned and wiped his eyes. He looked at the time, seeing it was 7:30. He had an hour before school started, so he got up and got dressed in his school uniform. Moments later, he heard a knock at his door. Opening it, he saw Aisha, who is now adorned in her very own school uniform. Good morning, Issei-san. She greeted him with a smile, which he reciprocated. Morning, Aisha-chan. I see you are already dressed. How's the uniform? He inquired. She simply made a twirl and ended with both her hands gripped as though offering up a prayer. Well, she was a nun, so makes sense. It fits nicely. She seemed to be very excited at the prospect of going to school. You seem to be excited, Issei noted. From her tone, She almost seemed to be brimming with joy, which wasn't that far from the truth. Yes, this will be my first time going to school. I've always wanted to try experiencing going to school, so this is like a dream come true, she said, almost jumping with excitement. Ha ha, I see. In that case, let's go downstairs and eat breakfast, shall we? He gestured towards the stairs and she nodded. Both made their way downstairs and saw that Ophis and Great-red were already in the kitchen. They had a standard breakfast of eggs and bacon. However, when Issei tried some type of new fruit she had never seen before, her taste buds skyrocketed. Oh my, this is delicious. What is it? She asked as she continued devouring the fruit. These, Issei, are dragon apples. They are fruits which are currently being grown in Tannin's territory in the underworld. Oh, you probably don't know who he is. Tannin is a former dragon king, now an ultimate class devil. They are a true delicacy for any dragon, so it's no wonder you find it delicious. In fact, many of our species rely on these fruits for survival. Unfortunately, climate changes in the environment made these fruits go extinct on Earth, so the only place they were found was the underworld. At the time, however, devils feared and hated dragons, so there was no way they would have given us that spot for nothing, which is why Tannin-sensei chose to become a servant and rose through the ranks to be able to acquire that territory. He single-handedly saved many dragon species from going extinct. You could say he is a hero to many dragons. Issei praised his mentor like a child talking about his favorite superhero. In a way, he idolizes Tannin, even though he now outclasses him in strength. Anyways, he could go on and on with stories about dragonkind, but they did not have the time for that. Having finished breakfast, it was time to head for school. Are you done with breakfast, Issei? He asked just to be sure, and she responded with a nod of the head. All right then, in that case, we are off. See you later, Mom, Dad. He bid farewell to his parents. Yes, see you later, Ophis-san, Red-san. She bowed her head, bidding them farewell as well. Have a nice day, kids. Issei, it is your responsibility to keep unwanted fellows away from little Issei. Teenagers, these days, let their hormones control them rather than rationality these days. Great-red said seriously, causing Issei to sigh. I know, Dad. You don't need to worry. She is in the same class as Matsuda and I, and both of us will make sure nothing happens to her. Of that you can be sure. Oh. Perhaps I should have a talk with this Matsuda person someday. Great-red remarked. It took everything Issei had not to laugh at the thought of his dad confronting Matsuda. Imagining Matsuda's reaction when his father stares him down. He would probably be scared shitless and most likely Drake as well, since even if Matsuda would not know who his father is, Drake most certainly would find out, no matter how good Great-red is at hiding his aura. Meeting face to face with the dragon god of dreams would probably be grounds for Drake to shit himself, despite being nothing but a soul trapped in a sacred gear. I'll let him know so he can look forward to that. He answered, releasing a small giggle which was caught by Issei, who tilted her head, not understanding the joke. Anyways, see you later. They both waved goodbye and made their way to school. The two teenagers were blissfully making their way to school, casually making conversation as they went along. On their way, they passed by a few students, and with his enhanced hearing, Issei could make out what they were saying even though they were trying to be quiet. Hey, isn't that Issei? Yes, but I don't recognize the girl beside him. Could she be a new student? Now that I look closely, she is wearing our school uniform. She is so cute. I think I'm in love. Go ask her out then. Are you crazy? Those two looks like they are close. I don't want to get killed. Is that his girlfriend? No, how will I get Issei-san to notice me then? That definitely came from a girl. He found it funny that people thought Aisha to be his girlfriend. On one hand, it was cool because it kept unsavory guys away from Aisha, but on the other hand, he didn't want needless rumors to start spreading around, as they were going to be a hassle to deal with. Not to mention, Akeno's reaction to such rumors. She wouldn't take it that far, would she? Maybe, probably I'm screwed no matter what, was the thought going across his mind. Aisha, unaware of Issei's turmoil or the remarks about the two of them being a couple, kept walking towards school with a smile on her face, excited to start the day. In class, everyone took their respective seat as the morning bell tolled. On cue, the teacher entered class and addressed her students. Good morning everyone, we have a new transfer student here today with us and I expect all of you to make her feel welcomed. The teacher told the class as all the boys started gossiping as soon as they heard the transfer student was a girl, all except Matsuda and Issei, who already knew who the unknown student was. You can come in now. She beckoned the transfer student to come in. Aisha entered the classroom. Several students could be heard going wow as she made her way to the center. With a bright smile that dazzled so many, she introduced herself. Good morning, my name is Aisha Argento. I transferred here from Italy. It's a pleasure to meet you all and I hope we can all get along. She introduced herself. All right class, I'll allow you to ask a few questions to get to know Aisha better. No perverted questions allowed. Is that understood? The last statement was directed at Matsuda and Motoyama. The latter looked dejected while the former just shouted I didn't say anything before sinking into his desk. The other students however started busting with activity. Oh my god, she is so cute. Are you single? Why did you move to Japan? Wait a minute, wasn't she the one we saw this morning? Can't believe how lucky we are that she is in our class. It seems that some people recognized her from this morning. Isn't she adorable? Even the girl could not help but find Aisha to be the cutest thing they had ever seen. While Rias and Akeno were living goddesses whom they could never compare to, Aisha gave more of an innocent maiden vibe. In a way, she possessed her own charm that captivated everyone's heart. Meanwhile, Aisha tried her best to answer as many questions as possible until the teacher decided that it was enough and it was time to start class. All right, it's time for class. You can talk to her later. Aisha, please go ahead and sit wherever you'd like. Thank you very much. She thanked her teacher before taking a seat in between Matsuda and Issei. The girls were of course worried for her being near one of the perverted duos, but did not believe anything would happen since Issei was there. Eventually class ended, and Aisha was surrounded by many of her classmates, mostly girls, who began to intermingle. Seeing the interaction brought a smile to Issei and Matsuda's face, considering that one of Aisha's dreams is to make many friends, so it is good to see her interact with so many students. Are you living nearby by any chance? Issei heard one of the girls ask her. Shit, but before he could intervene, Aisha answered. Well, I live with Issei-san and his house is a bit further from the school, but I enjoy the walk. She answered so innocently, yet everyone was so surprised that she lived with Issei. They all turned towards him for confirmation. Issei sighed before nodding his head. Yes, Aisha does in fact with me, and before you get any ideas, she did not have a place to stay, so my parents offered her to stay with us. She has her own room and all. Issei clarified before any unnecessary chatter began. Luckily, it seemed they believed him, although even if someone wanted to call him out on it, they were not brave enough to say it to his face. It's kind of funny, his reputation is somewhat mixed. Many of the students have taken a liking to Issei, particularly the girls. He was big, strong, very athletic, smart and easy to get along with. Everything one wishes in a man wrapped entirely in one package. However, there is a minority who also kind of fear him, and it's no wonder why. He is a walking behemoth who could probably lift them up with a single hand, so they really did not want to get on his bad side, which is why the ones who don't like him simply leave him be, silently cursing him behind his back. High school students are never simple. The door to their class soon opened. Kyo, it's Kiba-sama. Well, that answers who it was. No sooner than he came in was he surrounded by his very own fan club. Issei had to give him credit for being able to handle such a hassle every single day. He sure can't. What are you doing here, Kiba-sama? Did you come to see us? Do you need anything? Being bombarded with questions, Kiba simply waved his hand. I just came by to talk to my fellow club members, he said before turning his attention to Matsuda, Issei and Aisha. He calmly passed the girls and made his way towards him. Yo pretty boy, what up? Matsuda said. By now Kiba was used to Matsuda calling him like that, so he didn't really mind. His fan club, however, were a different story. They already hated Matsuda for being a pervert, but their hatred for him was intensified by the fact that he belonged in the same club as their idols and their prince. The death stares Matsuda received always sent shivers down his spine, but there was nothing he could do about it. He was already used to getting beaten up by the kendo girls for repeatedly peeping on them, but now he is getting a different kind of torture. How ironic that in the past he would have died to receive any sort of attention from girls, and yet now he's scared. How are you doing, Kiba? Greeted Issei with a wave of his hand. Good morning, Kiba-kun, greeted Aisha. Morning to you all as well. I'm sorry to have bothered you, but I just needed to inform you that Bachao would like to have a meeting after school to discuss club activities. Kiba notified them. Of course, Matsuda and Issei instantly understood what he meant by club activities, so they both nodded. Very well, tell her we will meet in the club room after school, Issei answered for all of them. Kiba nodded before leaving to let his king know. Eventually, the day came to an end and all three of them were making their way to the club room. So Aisha-chan, what do you think about your first experience in school? Are you getting along with other girls? Those are the things Matsuda was most concerned about. A former sister who had just transferred to our school. Since her lifestyle was far different from ours, there was a chance she might feel lost in school life. However, Aisha makes a smile which comes from the bottom of her heart, which then rejects any concern about her. Everyone is very kind towards me. They are teaching me a lot of things so I would get familiar with Japan. I also made lots of friends. I was also invited to go shopping with them. That's good to hear. Looks like her relationship with other classmates is going well. I'm glad to hear it. Remember, if you ever need anything, don't hesitate to ask me. Matsuda said confidently as he rubbed her head softly. Teehee. Thank you, Matsuda-san. All right, you two lovebirds, we should probably go ahead and not keep Rias and the other waiting. Issei smirked, interrupting their wholesome moment. Though being called lovebirds caused both of them to blush, much to the amusement of Issei. Eventually, they finally arrived to their club room. Knock knock. Coming after Issei knocked, Rias gave them permission to enter, which they did. It seems they were the last to arrive, as Rias, Akeno, Koneko and Kiba were already there. Sorry to keep you all waiting. Issei said. It's fine. No need to worry about it. How are you doing, Aisha? She addressed her bishop. I'm fine, Raya. Some summer Aisha wasn't sure how she should address her new king. Please don't worry about formalities, Aisha. I may be your king, but it does not mean you need to treat me any differently than before. You can call me however you like. Bachao, senpai, or simply Rias like Issei-kun calls me. You can even call me One-san if you'd like. Rias suggested. Aisha seemed to take her offer into consideration. In that case, is it okay to call you Rias once a more? She asked nervously. Rias found her so adorable that she immediately embraced her into her well-endowed chest. Déjà vu for Issei. Oh my, you are the most adorable thing I've ever seen. Of course, you can call me that. In fact, I would very much like that. Rias answered happily. On the side you could see Matsuda beaming with jealousy that Aisha was experiencing such a divine gift. Rias let her go after a moment, and coughed on her hand to recompose herself. Anyhow, the reason I called you here, Aisha, is to introduce you to our devil's culture so you may begin devil's work as soon as possible. I take it to guess that you do not know much about us, correct? Rias asked. Aisha nodded to her question. Very well. In that case, for starters, it's important to know that amongst devils there are certain ranks in the hierarchy. The main three levels are, of course, low class, middle class, and high class devils. Any one devil who is recently reincarnated and servant to a high class devil is known as a low class devil, the lowest level for devils. Though there are many high-class devils who are born into their status, like myself, there are also a few low-class devils who became high-class devils through hard work, attaining their rank by certain means. The means by which all the low-class devils attain their ranks are through various achievements. Achievements like societal contributions, war efforts, contract fulfillment, and success in something called the rating games. But that's a conversation for another time. What we want to focus on is contract fulfillment. You see, every low-class devil starts out by being assigned to receive contracts from humans. Contracts that tie the human to the devil and allow the human to make a wish or request for the devil to fulfill. If the devil fulfills this request, then a pact is created and the human must sign a contract with the devil. That, and the human will provide the devil with some form of compensation. Sometimes it's money, sometimes it's a gift, usually it depends on the agreement reached between both parties. But the old days of when souls were used as barter are practically done and gone. All in all, nowadays, a devil's job is contract making. She explained. Aisha paid close attention and, being the curious girl that she is, found all of this very intriguing, and so did Issei for that matter, since he didn't know much at this point in time, only having heard a few things from his sensei Tanin during his training. Matsuda, however, seemed to have been a bit confused. Bachao, not sure if it's just me, but you didn't tell me most of this stuff when you explained a devil's duty to me. In fact, I think you just told me the part of devil contract and that's it, questioned Matsuda, causing a small giggle to pass through the lips of Akeno, Kiba and even Koneko, who, for a moment, had a small smile on her expressionless face. Rias couldn't help but chuckle as well. The reason I didn't tell you all of this is, well, I mean no offense when I say this, Matsuda-kun, but all of this knowledge would most likely have confused you, so I decided to simply explain the main point. That being contract making, she tried to phrase it as nicely as possible, but everyone knew she basically called him dumb, which caused Issei to laugh and Matsuda to go wide-eyed before turning his head away. Sorry for being so dumb, he mumbled, feeling down after being indirectly called dumb even if it was true. Aisha, next to him tried to comfort him by patting his arm. Anyways, Rias decided to get back to matters at hand. Like I previously stated, I would like for Issei to begin her debut as soon as possible. Rias stood from her seat and walked in front of Issei and grabbed her palm. Matsuda immediately understood what she wanted to do, considering it was the same thing she did with him during his debut. Rias then proceeded to draw a magic circle of the Gremuri clan on Issei's palm. Thanks to that, she will be able to transport through the magic circle. Eikeno, please check whether Issei has enough demonic power to transport through the magic circle. Yes, Bachao. Eikeno placed her hand on Issei's forehead after Rias ordered her. A faint light appears on her fingertips, and it seems like she is reading something. We had an incident with Matsuda before, so we need to check properly. Although I do not think we will experience the same thing again, Rias said. Will something happen to Issei-chan? Issei asked, a bit worried for her after hearing that there was an issue beforehand, but it was immediately rectified by Matsuda. That was my fault. In order to use the magic circle, you needed to have a bit of demonic power inside of you, but unfortunately, I didn't possess even a little bit, so the magic circle didn't work and I had to visit my clients on my bike, he said, rubbing the back of his head in embarrassment. Bachao, it's okay. There's no problem at all. In fact, it appears she may have the most demonic power, surpassing even yours and mine. Her potential capacity for her demonic power is extraordinary. Rias seemed to be very surprised at Eikeno's report. That is probably thanks to her draconic heritage. Dragons are beings born from pure energy, so it is normal that our race possesses more magic than any other race. Even a halfling who never trained in her powers like Issei still possesses more than average magical potential than most people. Issei explained. Although having power and being able to effectively use it are two entirely different things. Wow, Issei-chan is indeed gifted. You are amazing. Matsuda exclaimed, causing Issei to blush at his praise. Indeed, it is excellent news. She will be able to use her power as a bishop to her fullest potential then. Rias added her own praise. If Issei recalled correctly, each of the evil pieces grant a certain boost to its owner. A rook like Koneko receives a boost in offensive and defensive strength. A knight like Kiba receives a boost in their speed, and Issei receives a boost in demonic power courtesy of her bishop piece. Last but certainly not least, the queen piece given to his girlfriend was gifted a combination of all three. No, Bachao, I feel a bit uneasy letting Issei go by herself. It's her first time and I can't stand it if some creep decides to take advantage of Issei-chan. Matsuda exclaimed fiercely before drinking a glass of water. Rias was about to answer until she got interrupted by Issei. Wait a minute. Rias. You said that your society accepts any kind of contracts as long as the payment corresponds to the favor. Does that include sexual contracts? His question caused Issei's cheeks to blush a deep crimson that seemed even redder than Rias's hair, while the aforementioned Rias simply looked at him in shock, not really expecting such a question. Matsuda spit out his drink and nearly choked himself, despite that he was worried about the same thing, while Eikeno simply chuckled at his behavior. The thought of some random male asking his Eikeno for any kind of sexual favors really did not sit right with him. In fact, it angered him. Before Rias could say anything, Eikeno decided to make the situation worse. Yufufu, it's true that there were a few clients who seemed to be creative in their requests. Eikeno finished that while very subtly accentuating her bust and smiling, as if she was trying to somehow provoke a reaction from Issei. It seemed to have worked, as they heard him let out a growl. Unforgivable. Rias, please give me a list of all mail contracts that have come into contact with Akeno. I wish to have a word with all of them," he said, catching her by surprise. What? Wait a moment. No, I'm sorry, but I cannot do that. That is a breach in confidentiality with our clients as well as not allowed. Plus, I dare not imagine what you would do to them. Rias flat out denied his request, or better yet demand. I won't do anything to them, just have a reasonable and civilized conversation with them, nothing else, he said, a smile ever so present on his face, although the intention behind that smile was crystal clear to everyone, with him cracking his knuckles in front them, causing Rias to sigh. Can't say I'm inclined to believe you when your actions betray your words. In any case, Akeno interrupted me before I could finish. While it's true that there are clients that may ask us such requests, those are handled by other devils who, shall we say, specialize in those requests, so I can guarantee you for the record that nothing of what Akeno implied to you has ever been requested from any of our clients. If I recall correctly, the closest thing we received to that extent would be Koneko's client, who asked her to cosplay for him. That seemed to calm him down a bit. Then Matsuda stepped in when he heard her remark. Oh, you mean Morisawa-san? I remember the guy, although the first time I met him, he was behaving like an ass. He freaking didn't believe that I was a devil at first, simply because I rode to his home on my bike. Matsuda complained. Why did you go on your bicycle? Couldn't you simply teleport there? Inquired a confused Issei, not understanding why he would travel using his bike instead of the usual transportation circle or even his wings. Hey, it's not my fault. I was a newly reincarnated devil and I didn't know how to fly using my wings until much later on. Plus, like you heard before, the transport circle failed because I had little to no demonic energy, so I was forced to find alternative means of transportation, which happened to be my bike, Matsuda said with a hint of embarrassment, still recalling the event and how Morisawa even mocked him for it. In any case, a request which is too lecherous for the devils they summoned would not be sent to my servants. There exists humans who requests those kinds of wishes, but those clients are sent to devils who specialize in that domain. Plus, any and all jobs that are asked of us are thoroughly examined by me beforehand, so I can assure you that the jobs we take are safe and nothing of what Akeno may have hinted at would have occurred. She directed her gaze at her queen when she said the last part, clearly annoyed with what she did. Although, Akeno simply struck out our tongue playfully and winked at her king, who could do nothing but sigh. Going back to the topic, since Aisha has a high demonic power, she has no problem transporting through the magic circle. Issei was satisfied knowing Aisha wouldn't come into contact with shady people, and it seems she possesses a strong start as a devil, so all is fine. Matsuda, however, seemed to started to feel uneasy. Even if Rias just explained that there would be no lecherous contracts, that wouldn't stop greedy people from asking such things when they see her. What will happen to Aisha, who is kind to anyone and who doesn't know how the world goes around, when she gets summoned by someone with lots of greed? Several devastating thoughts popped into his head, mostly on Aisha's clients wanting to grope her breasts or even having sex with Aisha. He wasn't sure that Aisha, who is really kind, would be able to decline if her client asks her a lecherous order. If anything, Aisha, who is serious and passionate to her work, will try to accomplish her work even by sacrificing her own body. Yup, everything his king just said went in one ear and came out the other. Matsuda, are you crying? Rias looks into his face with a worried looks. No, Bachao. Matsuda shakes his head while tears flow out his eyes. Bachao. I feel uneasy if Aisha goes alone. If Aisha. I can't stand it if some weirdo asks some sick wish to Aisha. His statement caused Rias to pinch the bridge of her noses, then started rubbing her forehead. Ha, Matsuda-kun, like I said earlier, there will be no lecherous demands asked from her clients. Those types of contracts are sent to the professionals who dwell in this type of field. Bachao, I know you are telling the truth, but I still feel uneasy. For all I know, the client will choose to change his requests the moment he sees how cute Aisha-chan is. I know I would, he shouted the last part, causing Aisha to blush and everyone else but one to start giggling. Pervert Koniko, with her ever stoic face, said. Rias simply sighs after seeing how worried he was and decided to concede. All right. For a short time, I'll put you with Aisha to support her. Are you satisfied with that? Thank you very much. Aisha. Let me handle the pervs. Aisha, you can just make the contract normally. Why yes. He takes Aisha's hand, and make a sigh of relief. Aisha herself looks worried that she is causing trouble for Matsuda, but that's not how he sees it. He simply wanted to protect Aisha. He even made a promise with Bachao. You have to do these kinds of things until they get annoyed with you, but even so he will protect Aisha even if it makes her hate him. So until the time came that she tells him I can do it myself, he will go along for the ride. So then, if a request comes, Aisha, you will transport through the magic circle by taking Matsuda-kun with you. Yes, I understand, Bachao. Please notify me if anyone tries anything on Aisha-chan. I will make sure they regret their actions with every fiber of their being, interjected Issei, who did not seem to be joking on his threat. You got it. Matsuda and Issei fist pumped, sealing their agreement. Rias simply sighed another time. When she says so, a giant magic circle on the floor started to glow. Akeno, who is in charge of the magic circles, began to read the devil letters that appeared on the magic circle. Pretty cool, Issei admitted to himself. Ara, there is a client who is trying to summon us, and it seems his wish is something very simple that even Aisha-chan can handle. Hearing Akeno-san's report, Bachao smiles. That's very convenient. Aisha can supply the demonic power needed for teleporting through the magic circle, and she can also support Matsuda, who lacks demonic power as well. Let's do it then. Matsuda seemed to be a bit embarrassed considering he was the one who is supposed to help her, but it looks like he might end up being the one needing the help, but that's fine by him. All he really needs to do is take care of Aisha while she performs her first job. Let's go, Aisha-chan. Yes, Matsuda-san. They both went towards the center of the magic circle and soon teleported to their destination. With both of them gone, Issei decided to take his leave as well. All right, I'll be heading home. Tell Matsuda to drop off Aisha at my place when they both done with their client. Akeno knows my address, so it should be fine. Very well. We have a few things to take care of before we head off. Have a good evening. Rias bid him a goodbye. Akeno went and embraced him in a hug, which Issei gladly returned, though could not hide the small blush from feeling Akeno's huge breast on him. Luckily, no one noticed. I'll see you tomorrow, Issei-kun. I'm still expecting that date you promised me, you fufu. Akeno whispered to him. I know. Don't worry, I haven't forgotten, or rather there is no way you would let me. Issei joked. They both shared a quick kiss before he waved everyone a final goodbye and retired for the day. Inside Issei's home, we encounter Issei was lying on the floor, barely able to breathe. What happened, might you ask? Did he train too hard? Did his father beat the living shit out of him? Did he encounter a powerful enemy? The answer to that is no. Taking a closer look at Issei, one could hear that he was laughing. He was laughing so hard that he could barely breathe. Why, you ask? 1 hour ago, as the Hyauda family was enjoying their evening, they heard someone ring the doorbell. They could sense that it was Issei alongside somebody else. Great-red and Ophis didn't know who he was, but Issei did, so he reassured his parents that he was a friend. Ophis got up from her seat and went to answer the door. The moment Matsuda laid eyes on his mother, his brain exploded into overdrive. Oh my fucking MAOU. She is the most fucking gorgeous woman I've ever seen. All he could do was stare wide-eyed and slack-jaw at the living goddess in front of him. She was the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. He loved Rias, but even he had to admit that this being surpasses even her beauty. His brain couldn't process the sight in front of him that he actually fainted standing up, still wearing his shocked expression. Issei started getting worried for Matsuda and tried to wake him up, shaking him gently while calling out his name. Issei, on the hand, starting laughing at the sight. This is the first time that someone actually fainted at the sight of his mother. All the while, Ophis simply tilted her head in confusion, not understanding that she had been the cause of his state. Eventually, Issei tried using her sacred gear to heal Matsuda, and after 5 minutes, Matsuda returned to the world of the living. What happened? Matsuda started rubbing his head. Matsuda-kun. Issei called out in worry. Oh Issei-chan, I just had the weirdest dream. I just saw what is no doubt a living goddess's front of me. Hands down the most beautiful women I've ever seen. No. Issei didn't know how to answer but was suddenly interrupted. Ha 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 ha, it wasn't a dream. Ha ha, you moron. Look in front of you. You could hear Issei in the background attempting to recover from his laughter while clutching his chest. Matsuda, heeding his words, turned around and was once again stupefied by the living beauty in front of him, but before he could faint again, Issei suddenly appeared before him and chopped his head. Oi, don't faint again and cause trouble for Issei-chan. I don't see what the big deal. Issei exclaimed before Matsuda started yelling. What the fuck, Issei, you never told me you had such a bombshell of an older sister. Grabbing the hem of Issei's shirt as he tried to shake Issei back and forth, though with little success considering the difference in physique. Hey bro, chill out. And what do you mean by sister? That is my mother. Issei revealed, which thoroughly shocked Matsuda. What? He looked again towards Ophis and there was no way in hell that he believed Issei. Like hell I believe that. She doesn't look a day past 20. Matsuda continued yelling at Issei, not believing that a woman as beautiful and youthful as that could be a mother of anything but maybe a baby. You do remember that we are dragons, right? Questioned Issei. Matsuda had question marks above his head, not understanding what he meant until Drake spoke in his mind. Partner, what he means to say is that dragons possess the ability to transform into any human form they please. Therefore, it shouldn't come as a surprise that his mother looks youthful. If she wanted, she could have taken the form of a child if she pleased, explained Drake. Understanding the situation, Matsuda let go of Issei and apologized for his behavior. Sorry about that, Issei, he apologized. Don't worry about it. He accepted his apology with a wave of his hand. So Matsuda-kun prefers bigger breasts, Issei said, her voice laced with a bit of sadness as she looked at her chest. She had very nice sized breast for a woman her age, but pales in comparison to Rias and Ophis. Matsuda quickly started to panic as he tried to solve the situation. He unintentionally created wait, Issei-chan. While it's true that I love big breasts, it doesn't mean that is all I like in a woman. In fact, I believe Aisha-chan to be perfect the way she is, and I have no doubt that you will grow up even more beautiful. Matsuda stuttered as he tried to rectify the situation, even though he never thought himself as a smooth talker. Luckily, it seemed to have worked this time as Aisha started to blush at the praise. Oh, thank you Matsuda-san. You're welcome, Matsuda said, scratching the back of his head. All right, before you two kiss and make out, please come in the house. It appears as though it's about to rain, and I for one wouldn't want you guys to get drenched in the rain and catch a cold. Though it mostly for you Matsuda, since Aisha would be more resistant to catch a cold thanks to her lineage. Issei said, prompting both of them to blush madly at the idea of being called lovers. Issei-san, they both shouted at the same time. Nonetheless, they both did as he asked and entered his home. Seeing as it was his first time at Issei's home, he took a look around and was surprised to see that he lived in such a normal and plain house. Not all dragons are like all the myths and stories you are thinking about, partner. While it's true some dragons are greedy and like to surround themselves with treasure, you will find them to actually be in the minority. When I was still alive, during my journey I dwelled in many different places, caves, forests, mountains, you name it, Drake explained, a bit of nostalgia resurfacing as he recalled his glory days. I see. Well, even if it was normal, it was still bigger than his home. Having met Issei's bombshell of a mother, he could not imagine how his father would look like. Probably one of those bishoujo guys that surpasses even the likes of Kiba if he had to guess. Boy, was he wrong. If meeting Issei's mother was like meeting a goddess, then meeting his father was the opposite. It was so frightening, as though you were face to face with the devil himself, and even that wouldn't do it justice. The moment Issei and Aisha introduced him to this behemoth of a man, Great-red, this led to the current circumstances, with Issei laughing his heart out on the floor while his father kept grilling Matsuda with tons of questions and behaved like a father who just met his daughter's boyfriend. Both his parents immediately took a liking to Aisha-chan, and they seemed to treat her as if she were their own daughter. Not that he could blame them. There is something about Aisha that makes her absolutely lovable. Maybe that crazy myth about dragons wanting to protect innocent maidens actually contains some truth to it. Aisha certainly fits the bill. Even he couldn't help but view her as a little sister. All in all, they welcomed her into their family and would do everything to protect her. Unfortunately, it spelled bad news for Matsuda as he became the recipient of such behavior, and the poor boy couldn't help but answer like a broken record. I don't. Matsuda was scared shitless as the living behemoth of a man kept staring him down. The force of his stare alone put so much pressure on Matsuda that he felt like if he answered even one question wrong, he would get killed. It didn't help that Drake seemed to make things worse by saying it was nice while it lasted, partner. May your journey to the afterlife be merciful, and other lines that involved his death. Massive amounts of sweat seemed to pour out of his face as he kept stuttering in fear. Aisha was very worried for him and seemed to ask Great-red with her eyes to ease up on him, which he seemed to catch. No one could blame him though, and if he knew his true identity, he might have actually died from the shock. However, while Matsuda remained clueless, Drake seems to have gotten an inkling as to their true identities. He could already sense that Issei was a truly powerful dragon the moment he met him in the Orc, which got him to wonder who his parents might have been. A dragon of his power could only have been sired by Dragon King and above. However, he recalled that Tanin only had 3 children. Migard saw him sleeping at the bottom of the ocean somewhere, never interacting with anyone. Fafnir doesn't really care much for anything other than his treasures. Yulong seemed too lazy to even think of a family. Vritra was defeated by Indra and sealed into several sacred gear. Finally, Tiamat, no. He highly doubted that Issei was Tiamat's child simply for the fact that he is interacting with his host peacefully. If he were Tiamat's child, she would have poisoned his mind to attack any of his host on sight. With that, the Dragon Kings were taken off the list. Both he and Albion dedicated their lives to their rivalry and never had any children before being sealed, and there is no way in hell those evil dragons would even bother to create something as mundane as a family. In addition, he could not sense a single bit of maliciousness coming from Issei even during the assault on the fallen angel church, so that idea was taken out. Besides, from his recollection, all evil dragons were either sealed or destroyed long ago. He was now left with only one class, dragon gods. At first, he thought himself crazy for thinking such a notion. Ophis and Great-red both never cared much for anything other than the dimensional gap, so it would be too much a leap to believe that they suddenly decided to have a child. Drake then thought that perhaps Issei was kind of like Sir Zex, an abnormally strong dragon compared to his fellow kin. That thought seemed more plausible than his other theory. That was, until now, when his host met Issei's parents face to face. While Ophis had hidden her energy extremely well, there was no way that he, of all people, would fail to recognize this aura. A limitless pool of energy that embodies the nothingness of the void. He knew that the woman standing in front of his host was none other than the Ouroboros, the dragon god of infinity, Ophis. He had met Ophis various times in the past, both when he was still alive and through his hosts. This revelation was both intriguing as well as frightening. He could understand why Issei was as powerful as he was if his very own mother was the Ouroboros itself. Now he was more than curious at who the father could be. What kind of dragon did the most powerful female dragon decide to mate with and have a hatchling? At first glance, he couldn't tell much, since he assumed, like Ophis, this dragon also seemed to be hiding his power really well. However, it was then that he felt it. When Issei's father stared Matsuda down, for a fraction of an instant, barely a millisecond, he unleashed his power that made Matsuda cower in fear instinctually, but that little instant was enough to make even Drake cower in fear, because that tiny moment gave Drake his answer. The power he felt from that one moment was by no means inferior to that of Ophis, and there was only one dragon in existence whose power rivaled that of the infinite dragon gods. It can't be, even though it unlike him. He couldn't but shake in fear at the possible identity of this being, and some part of him wanted to deny it, but the answer soon came to him in the form of a voice. Hello Drake. Why gosh, Drake heard a powerful draconic voice speaking in his mind. Is that truly you, Great-red? He asked nervously. Indeed it is. I had a feeling you would be able to deduce our identities despite our efforts to conceal our auras, and it turns out I was right. Great-red smirked to himself. The only reason I was able to deduce your identity was due to the close proximity with my host and due to the pressure you released for a brief moment on my host, explained Drake. If it wasn't for that and the fact that he had already met Ophis in the past, he would no doubt be as clueless as his host right now. Ah, I see, so it was that moment. I'll admit I was a bit careless there, but I wanted to see if the man little Aisha came to have a crush on is worthy of her. I've come to see her as a daughter, and I want to make sure whoever courts her is worthy. I see. Although would you mind easing up on my host? Any more added pressure and I feel like he will die from it. I'm impressed he lasted this long, to be honest. Drake begged Great-red, worried about his host's state. Very well. It seems even Aisha-chan is asking me to ease up on the boy. He is an interesting whelp. I'm impressed with the fact that he still held on to consciousness, unlike when he met Ophis. That was funny. Great-red let out a chuckle while Drake simply sighed. There is a reason for that. My host this time is a massive pervert and his mind couldn't handle the sight of Ophis' figure. Even referred to her as a living goddess, which is technically correct. Drake said with slight embarrassment. Great-red simply waved it off. Don't worry about it. Great-red casually ignored the fact that someone was ogling his own wife. Still, I can't believe I'm speaking face to face with you. I'm even more impressed by the fact that you are able to speak in my mind when I am nothing but a soul stuck in the boosted gear. I've never heard of such an ability. As expected of the true dragon god of the apocalypse, Drake praised Great-red for his abilities. That ability is in correlation with my domain, so it's no wonder you've never heard of it. Also, you don't need to refer to me by my title. We're both dragons and we have no need for formalities. You can keep calling me Great-red or you can call me Draken, which is the alias I'm using here. Very well, I will adhere to your request then. Drake answered back. Thank you. In that case, let's return to the matter at hand. Great-red tone suddenly turned serious. Since you know about identity, I wish to ask you not to reveal this information to your host. Great-red explained. Do not worry, I wasn't planning on it. I don't wish to give my host a heart attack knowing he is conversing with the strongest living being in this world and courting his daughter. Although, may I ask why? Drake wasn't planning on telling Matsuda Great-red's or Ophis' identity, but he still wondered why they wanted to keep it a secret. It's not like anything in this world posed a threat to them. I just wish for my son to be able to live a peaceful life for as long as possible. A friend of ours wanted Issei to experience school life and I wanted to grant their wish, so the less people who know of his true identity, the better. There is a massive difference between knowing he is a random dragon compared to the son of dragon gods. Great-red reminisced about Shuri, who convinced them that Issei should try out going to school and experience life as humans do. So it's true, Issei really is your son. To have not only one but both dragon gods as parents. That boy is nothing short of a miracle, said Drake in awe. Indeed, he truly is a miracle, Great-red said, his voice beaming with pride for his son. In any case, I would like Issei to remain as inconspicuous for as long as possible, although, it might be a moot point in this case considering I've heard from Issei about his involvement in helping with the fallen angel incident, so I know that it is only a matter of time before his secret is revealed. However, Issei has grown strong enough to protect himself from basically almost anything, so I have little doubt that he can take care of himself. It sounds like you know who is the mastermind behind this. Great-red smirked. I have my sources, was his answer. His source being none other than Barakiel. Although he didn't straight up tell him that Kokabiel was responsible for this, he did complain to him that Kokabiel was the only Kada class who wasn't content with the status quo. This situation was too coordinated to have been done by simple stray fallen, so there had to be a mastermind behind it all, and by process of elimination, Great-red deduced it could only be Kokabiel. Now, with Issei's involvement with the devils, it was only a matter of time before he would get dragged into their mess and have his presence known. Even though he wasn't worried about Issei's safety, he still wished it could have occurred after Issei finished high school, but fate never goes the way you want it to, even for dragon gods. All he could do was sigh his troubles away. I understand. I will comply with your wish and will not tell a soul about what I have learned today until the time comes then. Drake's reply seemed to snap Great-red's mind back on track. Thank you. In any case, it's getting late and I said all I needed to. Until next time, Drake. The Apocalypse Dragon bid farewell to the Red Dragon Emperor before terminating his connection. Outside Drake's mindscape, Everything seemed to have finished, although Matsuda was still scared out of his wits after a one-on-one confrontation with Great-red. Aisha was busy trying to help him while Issei was still laughing his heart out. Since it was getting late, Matsuda received a phone call from his mother asking him where he was and to return home as soon as possible. With that, Matsuda bid farewell to Aisha and Issei before heading back home. "What was your opinion of him, Dad?" Now that Matsuda was gone, Issei asked his father his opinion of Matsuda. Great-red rubbed his chin as he pondered a response. "Well, despite being a pervert, he seems like a nice guy. It's too early to make any assessment at the moment, but if this is the man Aisha-chan fancies, then who am I to stand in the way? It was fun messing with him though, and I did have a small talk with Drake," said Great-red. This, however, shocked Issei. "You spoke with Drake?" He was caught by surprise to find out his father had talked to Drake, but even more surprising was the fact that he didn't know when he did it. "Yes, I have. I had a suspicion that Drake would be able to uncover our identities, and it turns out I was correct. So during my meeting with Matsuda, I secretly talked to Drake within his mindscape to ask him not to reveal anything for the moment, and he agreed." "That is the simple version of it," Great-red explained. "I see," Issei replied, even though he didn't know what to make of it. Seeing his reaction, his father placed a hand on his shoulder. "You don't need to worry about it. It doesn't really change anything. Drake is a trustworthy dragon, and I have little doubt that he will keep his word." Great-red eased his son's worries. Issei smiled. "I trust you, Dad." A week had gone by in the blink of an eye, and Aisha seems to be enjoying school life as she wanted. She had made many friends, although most of them kept trying to warn her to stay away from Matsuda lest he corrupts her, which Aisha, being innocent and all, didn't understand what they meant and just thought it was just a joke. The only exception to this was a girl called Akira Kiryua, who did practically the opposite. She was pretty much the female version of Matsuda and Motoama, but she was a lot more discreet than those two, which was why she was never caught indulging in her hobbies, let's say. Anyways, when she learned of Aisha's crush on Matsuda, she actively advised her in many ways to attract his attention, and even told her what she would be doing in the future to cement their relationship, which made her turn crimson red at all those suggestions. Anyways, as Issei and Aisha exited their home to go to school, they were met with Akeno, who once more met them at their entrance to join them. At first, Issei felt really bad for having Akeno come all the way here and tried to convince her that she didn't need to do this, but Akeno kept rebutting that she wanted to spend as much time with him as possible, so eventually he relented and this became a common occurrence. Today though, they met Matsuda along the way, and he was more than thrilled to join them as they blissfully made their way to school. They were casually making conversation along the way, even gaining the attention of a few students that they happened to pass along the road. Then again, it was really impossible for them to not gain attention considering who they were. One of the two great ones Summer idolized throughout the school for her beauty and graciousness, Akeno Imejima. The new hot transfer student that some of the female body refer secretly at the emperor, Issei Hyuda. Aisha, who also recently transferred, had many students refer to her as the second mascot alongside Koniko Tuya, and finally the last member, although not viewed in a positive light like the other, was very renewed as well, Matsuda Suzuki, part of the perverted duo that everyone hated, especially the girls. He was also hated even more because he managed to join the orc alongside everyone's idols. It was to the point where they believed him to have blackmailed every single member of the orc and is forcing his perverted tendencies on them as a result. Of course, it was all a lie, but that's how it is. How are you enjoying school so far? Issei asked Aisha. It's amazing, Issei-san. I made so many new friends and everyone is so nice to me. We are going to be playing volleyball today in Pei. It's my first time. I'm so excited. You could tell from her tone and huge bright smile how excited she really was. Issei, Akeno and Matsuda all smiled at the bubbly reaction from her. They kept making casual conversation until they arrived at school, where they parted ways with Akeno, who had a different class. They all agreed to meet later on in the club. After separating, they each made their way to their respective classes. As Aisha previously mentioned during the day, their class was playing volleyball. Issei, however, was seated on the bench, but not because nobody wanted to pick him. It was the opposite, in fact. Everyone wanted Issei to be on their team because they knew that they would win if he was on their side. To prevent a fight that was about to break out, Issei proposed a solution where he would rotate between both teams at every 5-point interval to at least make it even. This solution was accepted by the instructor and they started playing. Comically enough, the only team that happens to be scoring was the one Issei was currently on. No one was able to stop him, not even Matsuda or Kiba, who were on different teams. They were usually the ones who ended up trying to guard him, since no one else stood a chance, but the difference between their physiques and stature was like comparing heaven and earth. A low-class devil against what they knew was at least a high-class dragon. It was almost like an ant taking on an elephant. No chance at all. In addition, they could tell that compared to the other students, Issei was a lot more serious when smashing the ball against them. He took it easy on other students since they were human, but he knew that they could take it, so he added extra force whenever he delivered the ball to them. Kiba, for one, did not mind at all. In fact, he took as a kind of training. Each time Issei sent a ball his way, he noticed that the speed and the force kept increasing each time he hit it towards him. At times, he was able to react and dig at the exact moment to kill the power of the ball. Other times he completely missed the timing and lost the point. This exercise seems to have given him the opportunity to train his reaction time, and he was grateful for that, so he kept going after the ball with all his strength. Matsuda, on the other hand, was an entirely different story. He seemed to be pissed. Not at the fact that Issei was better than him. He had already accepted that fact ages ago, but at the constant cheers he kept hearing by the girls. Kyawa Issei kun Kiba-sama, you're amazing. Issei, please go out with me. The constant cheers for the two seemed to have sent his jealousy into overdrive. He got so pissed that when the ball was in the air, he would jump with all his might and aim at either Issei or Kiba, pouring all his feelings into the shot, only for Issei or Kiba to gracefully dodge the ball by swaying their body to the side, ending with the ball going out and scoring a point for the opponent team. This seemed to gain them even more cheers, which drove him crazy with thoughts of unfairness. It's not as though he didn't receive any cheers. In fact, there was still one bright girl who would constantly cheer for Matsuda. At times, Aisha would shout, cheering Matsuda with all her might, which encouraged him to do better. Unfortunately, with the added adrenaline of Aisha cheering coursing through his veins, he jumped and smashed the ball once more at Issei or Kiba, only to once again have the same outcome occur, with either of them dodging and the ball going out, adding a point to the opponent's teams. There were times when he shouted at them, "Hey, why don't you take it like a man?" only to have Issei shrug his shoulders and answer with "but it was out," causing Matsuda to mutter silent curses as he headed back to his spot, while Issei could be seen laughing and Kiba chuckling at Matsuda's reactions. Anyways, eventually the score ended up becoming 20-20. At that point, the instructor decided to have Issei benched for the remaining time and allow the other students to finish the game by themselves. This leads us to the current situation. Both teams were doing their best to score points against one another. With Matsuda on one side and Kiba in the other, it was relatively even. Cheers were erupting left and right, most of them obviously going to Kiba as each team scored points. 21-21, 22-21, 23-24, 25-24. Eventually the game ended with Matsuda's team earning a victory, although a close one. It was hilarious how he expected some sort of cheering from having won the game, but instead all the girls began to swarm Kiba. Kiba-sama, you were amazing. Here's a towel to clean yourself. Kya. Even though it shouldn't be surprising, he still went slack-jaw at the lack of support until a certain blonde-haired nun came up to him. See, congratulations Matsuda-san. You were amazing out there, Aisha said with a bright cheery smile, causing comical tears to come out of Matsuda, who quickly scooped her up in a hug which surprised Aisha, making her blush. Thank you Aisha-chan. You are definitely an angel, Matsuda said, causing her blush to become an even deeper shade of red. Thank you, Matsuda-san, she said before finally returning the hug. A bit further ahead, Issei was smiling at their interaction while receiving praise from the fairer sex about his performance. At end of day, the group made their way to their club room. After entering, they each took their own seat as they all began to converse. Issei then noticed Akeno, who seemed to be humming and singing while preparing tea. She was definitely in a good mood, and Issei had an inkling as to the reason why. Akeno. You seem to be in a good mood. Did you find something which will satisfy your personality? Akeno-san then answers Rya's question with a big smile. No, that's not it. Yufufu. It's tomorrow. I can't help myself from smiling. Tomorrow is the day Issei is going to take me out on a date. That's right. Yes, tomorrow is the day off and is the day Issei would take her out on a date. I see, so that's why you seem so happy. Ryas nodded. Yes, I cannot wait for tomorrow. Akeno was super excited for her date with her boyfriend. Matsuda looks to Issei. Did you already plan out your date? He inquired, to which he received a nod from Issei. You bet I did. It's a date with Akeno. You can bet I will make sure it's a good one. Issei smirked. Lucky bastard, I want to go on a date with Bachao, Matsuda murmured, jealous that Issei gets a date. Anyways, I'll see you all later. I have a few things I still need to prepare for tomorrow. Issei bid them all farewell. All right, have a good evening. Issei. Ryas waved him goodbye. Hi, I'll see you at home. Issei-san, Aisha replied. Goodbye Issei-kun. Kiba bid him farewell. By Koneko uttered that single word. Akeno strode forwards and embraced him. I'll see you tomorrow Issei-kun, she said seductively, earning a blush from him, but he didn't want to lose out, so he decided to return the favor. Looking forward to it Akeno-chan, he whispered in her ear, gaining himself a small victory as he saw the blush on her face making him grin. Before she could retaliate, Issei instantly teleported himself out of the club room, making her pout. Ryas chuckled seeing her friend's reaction before going back to work on her documents. Issei's POV. It's morning. I am currently waiting out near the convenience store near the station where I told Akeno we would meet. I have to say that I am a bit nervous. It certainly makes you nervous when you are going out on a date. My heart is beating so fast. My clothes are set properly. Even if we see each other every day, I need to dress properly since it is a special occasion with my girlfriend. The other dragons back home would probably laugh at me for acting so nervously over a date. Heck, my dad laughed at me when I told him I'm little nervous, causing Mom to slap his head and remind him how nervous he was when he was proposing to her, causing him to blush and me to laugh back. Tanin would definitely reprimand him, saying he should act more like a dragon and be confident in himself. It's funny how I can easily charge into battle against fallen angels and not bat an eye while getting so nervous over a single date with a Keno. I try to calm myself by looking around. The town looks like it's autumn, but the heat from the summer is still present. I'm wearing long-sleeved clothes, but maybe half-sleeved would have been okay. I've never really cared for fashion. As long as it fits, it was good for me. It was tough though finding clothes due to my build, but I found some. It was nearing 9 a.m., the appointed time we were supposed to meet, and as I was thinking about irrelevant topic, a familiar voice caught my ear. Issei-kun. There's no way I could ever mistake her voice even in a large crowd. I turned my head towards the place the sound originated from, and I spot a girl my age wearing a one-piece who stops in front of my face. Wait, Keno. Hello Issei, did I make you wait? She smiled brightly at me. No, I blinked my eyes a few times. Keno had her hair down unlike her usual ponytail. She was wearing cute clothes worn by girls her age. It's the first time I'm seeing her like this. I thought that she would have dressed more sophisticatedly like a mature woman, but today she was wearing cute clothes worn by high school girls. She looked the same age as me, possibly even younger than me. She was still absolutely breathtaking. She looks even more beautiful than usual. No, Keno is always beautiful, but today she looks exceptionally beautiful and cute as well. Seeing him gawking at her, Keno giggled a bit before asking, "Ara, for you to look at me like that, do I look weird?" she teased, but in my current state I didn't catch it as I shake my head from side to side. And no, absolutely not. You look absolutely stunning, I answered quickly. It seems she became both embarrassed and happy at the same time at my direct approach, if that blush on her cheeks is anything to go by. Thank you Issei, you also look really handsome. Thank you. I thank her for her praising my appearance. Good thing I picked some nice clothes, though I feel she would have said the same regardless of what I wore, just like I would have found her beautiful no matter which clothes she wore. Shall we get going then? It's 9 a.m., so how about we get some breakfast first before heading off to the main attraction? I presented her my hand and she gladly took and even went a step further and enveloped my entire arm in her breast. Oh my god, her breasts really are huge and soft. I can feel heat raising on my cheeks and I have no doubt that I am blushing. It seemed Keno was too lost in her happiness to notice, which I am grateful for, otherwise she would have started teasing me. Yes, let's go. We began our day by heading to a nearby restaurant where we both ordered something to eat, although in my case it was mostly a buffet than a meal. A young waitress came to our table to get our order. Hello, are you ready to order? She asked with a smile. Both Issei and Keno nodded. I would like to have the standard breakfast meal consisting of eggs and bacon with a coffee for a drink, please, Keno began. The waitress wrote her order before shifting to Issei. I will have the pancakes, standard breakfast, egg sandwich with. The waitress seemed to be at a loss for words when she heard the amount of food I am ordering. I think she almost dropped her pen in shock, which was really funny. Sir, I don't mean to be rude, but are you sure you will be able to eat all of that? She didn't seem to believe I was capable of finishing everything I ordered. Not that I can blame her. She has no idea that I am a dragon and dragons can eat way more than an average human. I simply smiled at her. Yes ma'am, I have a very big appetite today, so I'll definitely be able to eat everything. I don't like to waste food after all. Being hit with what was to her a 100-watt smile from a handsome man caused her to blush. Oh, I see. Please forgive me for my rudeness. It's no trouble at all, I responded. Your order will be prepared shortly, she said before turning back and making her way to the kitchen. You could even notice a spring in her steps as though she just had an amazing experience. Yufufu, Issei is quite the charmer, I heard Akeno say. What? I wasn't sure what she was referring to. Nothing, she stuck out her tongue playfully. I decided to leave it. Eventually, our food arrived and we started eating. Akeno ate with the grace of a mature woman while I was, well, let's just say not well mannered. I was basically eating very fast, devouring all the food in front of me. Hey, don't blame me, I wasn't lying when I said I had a big appetite, and besides, I am a growing dragon and I require lots of food to keep me going. Besides, I was born and raised as a dragon and we don't really care about manners all that much. I remember during the feast I had with everyone, we would just stuff our faces with food, not caring about making messes. Some even began brawling during meals, but that was the way of the dragons. Ara, you have a little leftover food near your mouth. Oh really, sorry about that. I was about to wipe it off, but somehow Akeno beat me to it as she leaned over the table and grabbed a loose piece of what seemed to be my pancakes and ate it herself. It's delicious, she said with smirk on her face. God damn it, why did she have to do that? I'm sure she is doing this on purpose, isn't she? She even positioned herself so I have a clear view of her bountiful cleavage. If we weren't in a public place I would have certainly indulged. Damn it, these dragon instincts of mine sometimes. There are times when I wish Akeno would sometimes ease up on her teasing, otherwise, one day I may not be able to hold back and will start devouring something else very soon. Did you notice them? I hear her whispering to me, bringing me back to reality. Thankfully, it seems Akeno was unaware of my inner turmoil. It took a moment for me to understand what she said before understanding hit me. Ah, you mean our little followers? I let out a small giggle. Indeed, since the start of our date, I felt several familiar presences tailing us. Yufufu, it seems we have many people who came to check up on us, and I see you also noticed them. Akeno realized and made a small giggle. Yeah, although to be fair, it doesn't take much to figure out who is following us. I mean, they clearly stand out. I looked around at a certain spot and sure enough I spot a crimson color. All I could do was sigh as I see Rias, who is wearing a hat as well as sunglasses and is looking over at our spot while hiding behind a telephone pole. No offense Rias, but that is a poor excuse of a disguise if I ever saw one. I mean, at least do something about your hair. There aren't many, if not any people, with that kind of color. It's pretty much a dead giveaway as to who you are. Even normal bystanders are looking at her weirdly. If anything, that disguise makes you even more noticeable. Also, did she forget about my enhanced senses as a dragon? I can easily spot them from a mile away, considering that, just like I told Koneko before, they are the only devils in a field of humans. Next to her, I can spot a blonde person who was wearing glasses near Rias. It seems they dragged poor little Aisha into this, and by the expression on her face, I could tell she was a bit lost over what to do. She seemed to feel a bit guilty over spying on them. Rias must have somehow convinced her to join with something along the lines of "Don't you want to make sure their date goes smoothly" or something like that. A bit further away near the sweets booth was Koneko, who was wearing a cat-like mask. At first glance, it seemed as though she really didn't care about their spying on them, but based on the few stares she sent along their way, she probably already knew that I was onto them and just gave up and decided to indulge herself in sweets. Then, we have Kiba, who is dressed like he usually does in his school uniform, waves his hand apologetically to us. As for Matsuda, he is the only one who has decent stealth capabilities. The only one who seems to be hidden properly is Matsuda-san. It seems his years of peeking had the unexpected benefit of giving him excellent hiding skills. I said out loud, causing Akeno to raise a brow. Ara, now that you mention it, I don't see him around. Where is he hiding? Akeno asked while looking around. He is hidden in the store near them behind the counter. You'll see him holding binoculars, although it seems his attention got redirected to a group of beautiful women in the streets. I let out a small giggle. It's funny how Matsuda could be so easily distracted by a group of women. Well, at least it's better that his attention was focused on them rather than on Akeno. Even if he is his friend, he will not tolerate anyone peeking on Akeno. Eventually we finished eating, and as we exited the restaurant, Akeno grabbed my hand and started running. I was very surprised at the action. Let's shake Rias and the others, she said with a mischievous face. I let out a small laugh and nodded. All right, let's go, this might be fun. They are getting away. I hear a certain crimson-haired yell out at the others. So much for your disguise, Rias. The gang tried to chase them but lost them pretty fast. Where did they go? Matsuda asked, looking around for them. I don't know, but let's keep looking, responded Rias as they all headed a certain direction. In nearby alley, Issei undid the illusion, keeping them invisible from sight. Akeno seemed very impressed. Impressive, is that a new ability? I nodded. Yes, it's something I learned from Dad, although his illusions are still leagues ahead of mine considering they are part of his powers. I told her. Being the Dragon of Dreams, illusions are Dad's domain. He did say that someday I will easily catch up to him. Anyways, how about we get back to our date? Yes, Akeno agreed. However, there is one place I would like to visit before we proceed. Is that okay? I smiled at her and she tilted her head. Where is that? I giggled before responding with, you'll find out. We started to make our way to a certain destination I had in mind, and the closer we got to it, the more Akeno began to understand where they were heading. Issei, she stuttered as they arrived in front of the staircase leading to her old home, the shrine. I looked at her with a smile. I thought we could go visit your mother and talk to her for a bit before continuing our date, I told her. Although what I said was only half the truth, since I brought her for a second reason. We both made our way up the stair until we came face to face with Auntie Shuri's grave near the front entrance of the shrine. I could see Akeno, barely holding her tears, probably reminiscing of her mother and how much she misses her to this day, so I decided to start off. Hello Auntie Shuri, it's me again. Unlike the previous times I came to visit, I have brought you the most excellent of news. I placed a hand on Akeno's waist and brought her to my chest. As you can see, Akeno and I have begun dating, although you probably already knew this would happen considering how many times in the past you used to tease us about it. I laughed a bit before putting on a more serious expression. I promise you that I will love and protect Akeno even if it costs me my life. You sacrificed your life to protect Akeno from harm, something that I failed to do. I felt a few tears coming out of my eyes. I'm really sad and truly regret that you are not here with us. We all miss you so very much, and to hear your voice again would truly be a blessing. Look at me crying when I was supposed to be bringing happier news. I'm sure you would be reprimanding me to stop moping around and to keep on moving forward, because that is just the type of person you are, Auntie. I know you wouldn't want us to keep crying over your death, so I'll just say this. Thank you very much for saving Akeno-chan, and I vow to keep protecting her to ensure that your death was not in vain, and this is a promise I intend to keep, I said, wiping the tears off my eyes. Looking at my side, I can also see Akeno wiping off her own tears. Seeing that I was finished, Akeno took a step forward and placed a hand on her mother's grave. Hello Oka-san. It's been so very long since I last saw you. I'm sorry I never came by to visit. It's just that, for the longest time, this place only held bitter memories for me ever since the day you died in my arms. Even passing by the shrine caused unwanted memories to resurface that I desperately wanted to forget. Even worst was that I blamed both Issei and Bara, Tucson, for everything. I know if you were here, you would probably have reprimanded me, saying that Tucson loves me, that Issei was only a child, that my hatred was misplaced, and you would be right. I know it was wrong, but I needed someone to blame to accept that cruel reality, or my mind wouldn't have survived. Akeno stopped to take a moment to breath before continuing. However, with Issei back in my life, I am finally beginning to let go of all my hatred. It will take some time, but I hope, no, I'm sure my heart will be able to forgive Father even if there is nothing to forgive him for. Not a day goes by that I do not miss you and wish so dearly to have you back in my life, but even so, I know that it will be all right. I love you so much, Oka-san, and I never got the chance to say this, but thank you very much for saving my life, Oka-san. Akeno bowed a bit as fresh new tears spilled onto her mother's grave. Seeing her like that, I caressed her gently down her hair and embraced her once more. It's really hard to see her like this, but I'm sure she needed this. I'll ask you to forgive me, Auntie, for letting Akeno cry so much. It's a good thing she wasn't wearing makeup, otherwise it would have smeared all over her face. Then again, Akeno is beautiful even without makeup. You know Auntie wouldn't want you to cry, Akeno. She would want you to see you smile, I told as I wiped off a few stray tears. Akeno looks up to me, knowing that what I said was the truth. Her mother wouldn't want her to be sad but look towards the future. With a deep sigh to calm herself, she finally revealed that beautiful smile of hers that I love so much. You are right. I'm sure she wouldn't want to see me like this. That's the way. You look a lot more beautiful when you smile, he complimented her, earning a small blush from her which pleased him since he didn't want to see her so depressed. All right, then we should probably say goodbye and return to our date. I'm sure if Auntie Shuri were here, she would probably shoo us away to go and have fun together, he said, causing Akeno to giggle, knowing that he was probably right. Yufu, you are right. She would probably also force us to tell her everything that went on when we come back, she added. This time, Issei let out a smile. Right, so until then, he turned back toward his aunt. Please watch over us, Auntie. I'm sure everything will turn out all right with you looking over us, and once again I promise that I will take care of Akeno and protect her even if it costs me my life. This was a promise he intended to keep. Thank you for everything, Oka-san. I love you so very much, and I hope you'll watch over me as you always have. Akeno added her own 2 cents before they both said farewell to Shuri and began to leave the shrine to continue their date. Before descending, Issei took one final glance at the shrine before smiling. Are you coming, Issei? He heard Akeno say. Sorry, I'm coming now, he said before joining her. Unknown to Akeno, the reason Issei was smiling wasn't at the shrine but rather at the person hidden inside. Akeno couldn't sense him since he was hiding his presence, but Issei did. Coming out from the entrance of the shrine was none other than Barakiel, who had tears streaming down his face. Yesterday, he had received a call from Issei who asked him to come to the shrine at a certain time, though he wouldn't tell him why. He assumed he simply wanted to meet and spend time with him, so he promised to be there. He already finished all of his assigned work, so he had some time to spare. At the promised time, he teleported inside his old home. He himself didn't visit here much other than to pay respect for his deceased wife. This place only now held bitter memories. What was once a place filled with happiness and warmth now only filled him with sadness and despair. All this shrine did was remind him of his failure to protect his family when they needed him most. In the blink of an eye, he had lost all that mattered to him despite the constant preaching of Issei, his family and his faction that it was not his fault. Hell, as Azel himself told Barakiel that all fault lies with him for pulling him away from his family, but Barakiel completely denied that. It was his fault and his alone. He should have dealt with his enemies more quickly, but instead he took his time to deal with them. Those few precious minutes were what delayed him from saving his family in time. Shuri and Akeno would still have been with him and he would have had a home to return to, but fate was cruel to him. No matter what anyone said, he blamed himself for all these years for his failure. Eventually, he started feeling the presence of two people heading up the stairs. When they came into view, it felt as if the entire world stopped for him. Next to Issei was none other than his daughter Akeno, all grown up. She was so beautiful, but how could she not be when she looked nearly identical to her mother with the exception of her violet eyes and her more endowed chest, courtesy of her fallen angel heritage. But what was she doing here? Wasn't he supposed to meet only Issei? That's when it clicked to Barakiel that Issei must have wanted to set this all up for him to meet Akeno without her knowing. While he had received a letter from his daughter and knowing that she was safe did wonders for his heart. However, another part of him also desperately wanted to see her, even if only to catch a single glimpse would have relieved him of so much burden, yet he knew that he could not meet her yet. His daughter wasn't ready to meet him yet, as her hatred still lingers in her heart, and she asked him to give her some time before they could meet, and the fact that he got even that was a miracle in itself. Therefore, he decided to give his daughter the space she wanted, lest he creates a greater rift between them. It wasn't easy though. It took all of his strength and willpower to resist the urge to run towards his daughter and hug her, telling her that he is sorry, telling her that he never stopped thinking about them and not a single day goes by that he doesn't wish he could turn back time to fix his greatest mistake, yet he knew he couldn't just yet, so he decided to take solace in this opportunity that Issei had provided him. He really needed to thank him for this later. He listened into their entire conversation with Shuri. To hear that his daughter was doing her best to forgive him, did so much more than words could ever describe. More tears drifted down his face as he could feel his shattered heart slowly melding back together. Her words gave him the greatest of hopes that they could be reunited as a family, and he couldn't wait for that day to come. Eventually, they left, but not before he saw Issei looking back at the shrine and smiled. However, rather than smiling back at the shrine, Barakiel believed that smile to be for him, and he could do nothing but return one even though Issei couldn't see it. When they both left, Barakiel exited the shrine, making his way next to his wife's grave, yet his gaze never left the entrance where they left. "Thank you, Issei. Thank you," he thanked Issei from the bottom of his heart for giving him the opportunity to see his daughter. He wiped his tears before redirecting his attention to Shuri. "Hey there, Shuri. Sorry for that pathetic display earlier. Look at me crying like a simple child. I can already imagine what your reaction would be," Barakiel stated. "Ara, since when has my husband become such a crybaby, you fufu?" He could already imagine his wife saying that, causing him to giggle at the thought. "You are right. It would seem I have become a crybaby, but I believe these tears are well spent as I got to see how our daughter has grown up to become such a wonderful woman. She looks so much like you, and I have no doubt you would be so proud of her," he said before his tone started becoming more somber. "Not a day goes by that I do not wish that you were here with us. Many times, I told myself that it should have been me who died that day, not you. If I could trade my life in exchange for yours, I would do so in a heartbeat. Knowing you, you would probably punish me for even thinking such a thing, and I know you wouldn't want me to think like that, but a child will always need a mother's love more so than its father. Those are my honest feelings, but I know you wouldn't want me to sink into depression any longer now that Akeno is safe, so let me just say this. He placed both his hands and his head on top of Shuri's grave. Thank you so very much for saving our most precious treasure, and please watch over them from the heavens above. I love you so much now and forever. I love you too, Barakiel. Keep an eye on both of them as well. He could have sworn, for a moment, he heard his wife's voice causing him to raise his head, looking back and forth only to find nothing there. But, even though it may have been a figment of his imagination, he was glad to have heard his wife's voice, one last time. I promise, Shuri. I promise, he said as he looked up to the sky before finally taking his leave and going back to Grigory. As both Issei and Akeno were making their way down from the shrine, Issei's thoughts were focused on his uncle. Please, let this be a step forward to healing his heart. Indeed, Issei had orchestrated all of this in order to give his uncle the chance to see Akeno without her knowing. He knew that not telling Akeno was wrong, but he desperately wanted to give Barakiel a respite to all the pain and suffering he had been going through all these years. Seeing Akeno would no doubt help heal his heart, and so he came up with this idea when setting up his date. Luckily, Akeno couldn't sense Barakiel as he had hidden his presence since this was still officially Devil's territory, so she never figured out he was there. So, where to now? His thoughts were interrupted by his mate's question. He quickly recomposed himself to answer her. Now, we are heading to the amusement park. I bought us 2 tickets in advance so we wouldn't have to wait in line. Since we took a bit more time than I'd thought, not that I minded, I would like to teleport there so as to not waste time with what I have planned, Issei explained. Very well, I don't mind. Akeno replied as Issei held out his hand. Great, then please grab my hand and I will teleport us there, or if you want to be more specific, phase us there. I believe you saw it when we went to hunt down the stray, or when I went after Matsuda when he went to save Aisha. It took a while for Akeno to remember, but she eventually did, giving him a nod signaling she remembered. Ah yes, I do recall that. Anyways, let's go, she said before grabbing his hand. Issei then teleported them near the amusement park out of praying eyes, making sure no humans could see him materializing in a burst of flames. They then proceeded to make their way toward the entrance. Since they already had their tickets, they moved past the line and entered the amusement park. They could hear the bustling noises of several rides and the laughing cries of people having fun. Akeno looked around as though reminiscing. Wow, it has been such a long time since I've been to the amusement park. Her expression suddenly fell. Not since, well, that day he suddenly grabbed her hand, causing her to nearly jump, and that is precisely why we are going right now. To replace those awful memories with bright ones. We promised your mother that we would no longer let that day hold us down, so please cheer up. Issei tried to soothe her, which seemed to work since she was back to smiling at him again. Come on then, let's go have fun, he said before dragging her along. Akeno couldn't help but giggle at seeing Issei act like an excited child. They then started going on several rides, having loads of fun and making new brighter memories to replace the bad ones. They bought several of the pictures taken during the rides. The best and funniest one was when they were on a roller coaster and you could see Issei covering his mouth trying to prevent his food to come out. It wasn't a great idea to ride a roller coaster right after having lunch. Right after the ride, Issei bolted to the nearest trash can and vomited everything, with Akeno patting his back to help him relax. Issei was extremely thankful to any god that was listening that the younglings and especially his father weren't here to see this. They would laugh at the fact that a roller coaster was enough to make him buff. However, Akeno was laughing and having the time of her life. Seeing her so very happy made all of this worth it in his book. Eventually, they made their way to the arcade and Issei seemed particularly excited about coming here, which caught Akeno's eye, but she didn't mention it. "So, we are going to the arcade next?" she asked just to be sure. Issei looked at her with an excited expression on his face. "Yup. Last time we came here, you destroyed me at every game and today is the day I get my revenge," he said in a competitive tone. It took a moment for Akeno to recall the time they had gone into the arcade and she beat him at every game. "Yufufu, what makes you think that today will be any different than last time?" she rebuked him. A clear smirk on her face this time, which was returned by Issei. "I've gone through intensive training to prepare for this day. That is where my confidence is coming from. I love you, Akeno-chan, but today is the day I wash away my wounds of defeat from so long ago." "You ready?" he said, prepared to finally beat Akeno at a game. "Yufufu, after you," she giggled as they both entered the arcade and prepared to face off. Several games later. "You lose, you suck, you lose." Again a resounding scream could be heard all across the arcade. "What the heck is this?" Issei screamed in distress, having once more lost every single game to Akeno. He could not believe this. All the training he had gone through down the drain, useless against Akeno. How the heck was she so good, was all he could think. "How are you so good at these games, Akeno? Are you some kind of hidden genius? And what the hell was up with those last few games, telling me you suck or you lose again? Are even the machines out to mess with me? There has to be some kind of glitch that prevents any dragons from winning. I don't see any other possible reason for me to have lost so many times." Words of complaint were coming out from his mouth as fast as a machine gun, with his arms flailing everywhere. He looked like a child that was denied his favorite toy by his parents. Akeno, all the while, was laughing hard at her boyfriend's antics. "How are you so good?" Issei asked again. Akeno breathed in to stop her laughing and looked at Issei. "It's actually pretty simple, Issei-san. The reason is," she said before leaning over a bit to whisper something. Issei followed up and leaned as well since he was taller than her. When she was near his ear she whispered, "The reason will remain my little secret," she whispered before taking a step back and sticking out her tongue in tease. Issei became slack-jawed and couldn't believe it. "Yufufu," she chuckled at his reaction. "I should thank Noel-chan the next time see her," she thought to herself. The reason she was so good at these games was, like she said to Issei, a very simple reason. One of her regular clients was a female gamer called Noel. She would regularly call Akeno to be her gaming partner for multiple games. Throughout the years, she probably got to experience every game imaginable, and yes, that includes arcade games as well. Therefore, while Issei supposedly trained for several weeks, it did not compare to the years Akeno spent playing alongside Noel, so she had a lot more experience in this field compared to him. Though she would never tell him that, as she absolutely enjoyed seeing his reactions. We are now presented with the same scene from almost 10 years ago as Issei came out of the arcade head down, feeling depressed, unable to have won even a single time to Akeno despite all the training he did. "It's not fair," she heard him mumble, causing her to chuckle. "Yufufu, maybe you'll have better luck next time." "Now, what's next?" Issei simply sighed in defeat before looking at his watch. Seeing it was 5:30, he determined they had time for one final ride before heading off to his final destination. "We have time for one more ride, so if you've got a suggestion then I'm all ears," he told her. She tapped her chin thinking about which ride she wanted to go until she stumbles upon one. I know exactly which one to go on. She pointed towards a single ride and Issei redirected his attention to the place she was pointing to. Ah, I see. Good choice for a final ride. The ride Akeno was pointing to was the Ferris wheel, and that is indeed a great ride to end with. They didn't have to wait long as the line wasn't as big as it usually is. They soon boarded their own capsule and then the ride began. As they were rising higher and higher, a wave of nostalgia hit them as they both recalled the last time they were here. Yufufu, we shared a ride all those years ago, didn't we? Akeno stated. Issei nodded. Yes, we did. It was also the last ride we took to commemorate my birthday. We both have grown and changed a lot since that day. However, he turned to look at her. My feelings haven't changed since that day. I'm truly thankful to be able to share these moments with you and will continue to do so, he said with a smile adorning his face, causing her to blush. Thank you, Issei, was all she could say before recalling something else about that day, and this was a good time as any to say what was left unsaid that day. Do you remember how I was about to tell you something back then? She asked him. Issei took a moment to ponder about it until it clicked. Oh right, you were about to tell me something before being interrupted by the fireworks. I remember that. He nodded his head, recalling the events. Yes, back then I didn't get to say it, but now is as good as a time as any, even though it is pretty mundane considering I already said it when we reunited. Akeno grabbed his hands as she stared into his eyes. I love you, Issei, he outed. I've loved you ever since we were kids and I feel so very blessed to have you in my life. She told him with utmost sincerity. Issei brought her forward for another passionate kiss before separating. Thank you very much, Akeno. It was the same for me, but I believe that I fell in love with you the very first moment I've laid eyes on you. You were the most beautiful girl I've seen, and I knew that there was something special about you that I just couldn't put into words. It just took me several months to figure out that I was in love with you. You are the perfect mate for me, Issei said, causing Akeno's heart to skip repeatedly, although she didn't understand what mate meant. Mate. Seeing her confusion, Issei answered her. A mate is basically the dragon's term for their girlfriends. A soulmate, if you will. Soulmate. She did like the sound of that and she believed it suited them perfectly. Even after almost 10 years of being separated, they managed to find each other again. Yufufu, a soulmate. I like the sound. That sounds very romantic. I agree, Issei responded before they shared another passionate kiss filled with nothing but their undying love for one another. Eventually they separated, just in time too, as the ride seems to have come to an end. They soon disembarked as they made their way towards the exit. Issei was checking to see what time it was. Seeing that it was 6 p.m., he let out a small smile, glad to see that they had managed to finish in time for his final destination. Where are we going now? Asked Akeno, who was following him, curious to know what else Issei had in store for her. Away from prying eyes, Issei held out his hand. Take my hand and you'll see. Akeno grabbed his hand and once again they teleported to Issei's final destination. Phasing into existence once more, Issei let go of Akeno's hand as she looked around her surroundings, wanting to find out where he had taken them. Where are we? This place looks familiar, but I can't seem to place it. Akeno said as she looked around, seeing various mountains, trying to remember where this might be. Though she didn't have to wait long as Issei answered her, this is the dragon territory in the underworld owned by Tanin. Akeno's expression suddenly turned into an understanding one, now knowing why this place seemed familiar, since it was in fact the underworld. In fact, if she paid close attention she could spot several dragons flying overhead. After that day, my parents and I moved here in order to seclude ourselves until things died down. Here is where I trained and grew up alongside my fellow dragons. I absolutely loved it here, and so did my parents. Issei looked up as if reminiscing of past memories. Some of my best memories have happened here, and I will always consider this place my second home. However, Issei looked back to Eikeno with a smile. My greatest memories have and always will be with you. Now that caused a reaction out of Eikeno as her face became a shade of red that surpasses even Rya's hair. She could barely come up with an answer as she stuttered to come up with one. Normally, she would be able to respond with something or tease the hell out of him, but the raw emotion behind that confession prevented any sort of response from her. This time it was Issei's turn to laugh at Eikeno's reaction before spreading his wings from his back, holding out his hand to her. Would you like to spread our wings and go for a ride? We never did this back in the past, he asked her. She nodded and unfurled her own wings. He couldn't help but let out a smile at the sight of her wings. One of them was her devil wings that she got when reincarnated as Rya's queen, but it was the other one that he paid special attention to. Her fallen angel one. She would usually only reveal her devil wings due to her deep-rooted hatred for fallen angels in the past, but now, this proves that she is slowly but surely starting to overcome her hatred for fallen angels, and he couldn't happier. He had always found her wings to be absolutely beautiful, and seeing them again reminded him of the first time she revealed her wings to him when they kids. I would love to. His trip down memory lane was interrupted by the sound of Eikeno's reply, not that he minded. The past helped shape who they were today. The present as well as their future is what's most important now. Let's take flight. Issei said, clearly excited. He held her hand as they both flapped their wings to gain altitude, and they slowly rose up in the air. They soon took to the skies and started roaming around. Both taking in the sights, but for two different reasons. Issei, out of nostalgia, remembering all the things he did here during the past 9 years. Eikeno, on the other hand, was looking at her surroundings with newfound wonder. It was the first time she had ever been here, and it gave her the opportunity to see the place where Issei had been raised for most of his life. It didn't take long for their cruise to be suddenly interrupted as many dragons started flying alongside them, startling Eikeno. She had never been near so many dragons, so it would be a lie if she said she wasn't a bit scared at the present moment. She moved ever so closer towards Issei where she felt safe. Though it would turn out her worry was for naught. It's Issei. Issei's back. Have you come back to train? Are you and Borva going to spar again? We should tell Tanin-sensei will Ophis come to play with us. Our mamas want to talk with Ophis too. Eikeno could tell that all the dragons seemed to be very excited with Issei coming back here. Then she noticed that some of their attention was redirected to her when they noticed that Issei wasn't by himself. Who is that next to him? She smells like a devil. Oh, isn't she Rya's Grimoire Queen? Is she his mate? Before the younglings could continue, Issei decided to stop them. All right guys, break it up. Can't you see you are all overwhelming her? At Issei's order, they all backed away slightly, giving Eikeno a bit of space. She could see that they didn't mean to cause her any discomfort, they were all just super excited. They seem to be acting like kids who are meeting their favorite superhero. Though, now that she took a good look at them, they seemed pretty small, averaging from 4 to 7 meters, and she was sure adults' dragons weren't this small. I'm sorry Eikeno. The younglings seem to have been all thrilled too excited to see me. Most of the younglings here were taken care of by Mom, so they are all very attached to her and love her very much. She comes by very often and helps to take care of the young. He explained to her. I see, she said with a nod of her head. Anyways, while it's really good to see you all, I'm currently spending some time with Akeno and would like to continue without being interrupted. I promise to spend time with you guys another time. He tried to explain, however. Or, then can we at least fly with you? Yeah, we would be honored to fly alongside you. Yes, said the other dragons. Issei simply sighed. On one hand, he understood that they simply wanted to spend time with him and he didn't have the heart to deny the younglings, but on the other hand, he wanted to spend some quality time with Akeno. This was a date he had prepared for quite some time. Yufufu, why not let them join us? Issei. I don't mind. Issei turned to look at Akeno, who seemed amused at the situation but didn't mind letting the younglings join them. Are you sure it's okay? He asked her again just to be sure. She simply nodded. He sighed in acceptance before looking back at the whelps. All right, you can join us. Although, we aren't going to be doing anything too extreme. We are simply taking a leisure flight. He told them. They all nodded very fast. Yes, they all shouted. Issei and Akeno then resumed their flight. The younglings, instead of simply just following them, got into a V formation like a flock of birds, with Issei and Akeno in front leading them. For the next 10 minutes they continued with this simple pace until some of the more restless younglings grew bored and decided to break formation and perform stunts, Great-red style. They dice-bombed towards the ground, then when they were inches above the floor, they went straight back up and followed up with different moves. They were doing 360 spins, 180 spins, twirls and many more stunts, as if trying to show off their moves to Issei. Eventually, more of them joined and now half of the dragons were in V formation while the other was performing stunts around them. It was truly a spectacular sight for Akeno, and she was very impressed by the fluidity of their movements despite their massive bodies. Then again, she shouldn't really be surprised. The sky is domain of the dragons. Even at a young age, these dragons were able to learn how to move freely in the skies above. Truly, they were a race born to dominate the skies, even better than any other races. Perhaps even better than the gods themselves. It's amazing, she stated, seeing this spectacular sight. Yes, it is. Though it would seem most of them have been taught by my father to perform those moves. If my mother were here, I could already picture what she would say. She would probably say, Baker-red, stop corrupting the younglings with those annoying stunts of yours. Yes, exactly that. Wait, what? They both stopped moving mid-air as Issei recognized the previous voice. He turned his attention towards the source of the voice, and sure enough, down below, he could spot both of his parents alongside a group of dragons, most likely the mothers of the younglings. His mother was berating his father for negatively influencing the young with his antics. He was honestly surprised to see them here, as they had not told him that they were going to be visiting here today. His parents have gotten extremely good at hiding their presence. He wasn't even able to sense them despite his enhanced senses. Though it makes sense considering they had been hiding for the past 9 years, so practice makes perfect. I couldn't even sense them. Akeno also shared his surprise at seeing them here. The younglings, on the other hand, upon seeing Ophis, dived towards her, very excited to see her again. It's Ophis, let's play. Many of them started surrounding Ophis, but not all of them. Some of the young drakes went to Great-red as well. Mostly the ones who performed stunts. I performed the 360 just like you showed me. How was it? Did I dive fast enough? Ha, you've done well, young drakes. Those were amazing moves. although I would have waited a bit longer on the dive before moving back up. You need to be just inches away to fully maximize the effect of a true daredevil stunt. He could hear his father tell the younglings, much to the displeasure of his mother. Seeing that both Issei and Akeno noticed them, they both greeted them with a wave of their hand. This action was returned by Issei and Akeno, who still had surprised expressions on their faces. After a moment, they both looked at each other and let out a laugh at the awkward moment that occurred. Well, that was entertaining. Anyways, we are almost at the place I wanted to take us to, and luckily, my parents' arrival got the attention of the younglings," he said, finally able to get back on track and take her where he wanted to go. They made their way to the top of a mountain. It wasn't the biggest but still a pretty tall mountain, standing at 80 meters. At the top, Akeno could see what seemed to be a table with 2 chairs placed there. It seems Issei brought her here to have dinner. She had to admit, it was very charming and romantic to have dinner together with a spectacular view of the plains. They both took their seats as Issei explained what he himself made for supper, though it wasn't much. "I prepared for us simple dinner. Spaghetti with meatballs. I'm not very good at cooking, so I could only prepare something easy to make. Sorry if it isn't to your liking." Issei was clearly a bit embarrassed over the fact that he wasn't able to cook something nicer, but with amateurish skills, he would have most likely burned or ruined any complicated dish. "It's no problem at all, Issei. It's the dough that counts, and I love spaghetti, so please don't mind it," she told him, helping to ease his worries. With that done, they began to eat. The dish was delicious even for a simple dish. "It's really good, Issei." "Really? In that case, I'm glad you liked it," answered Issei, glad that his food turned out well. "I'm sure Auntie Ophis would have taught you how to cook if you'd ask her." "No. Yeah, she would, but I wanted to make something for you myself. Mom is a great cook though. Did you know it wasn't always like that? At the beginning, she absolutely sucked. Please don't tell her I said that. She had never cooked in all her existence since she never really needed to eat anything, but after my birth, she decided to give it a go, and with no prior experience, her food was, as you can imagine, pretty bad. She almost poisoned my dad, though he was still skeptical whether it was accidental despite the vehement denial of Mom. Eventually, after tons of practice, she became very good at cooking. Though when we transferred here, she didn't need to cook as much since we simply hunted for meat." When he finished talking, Akeno then remembered the earlier conversation that took place and decided to ask him more about the topic. "Earlier, some of the dragons were calling you the Dragon Prince. How did that came about?" she asked. She had never heard Issei call himself that, and if anything, wouldn't he be a dragon god rather than a prince? "Oh yes, I did promise you that I was going to tell you about it later. It's a bit of an embarrassing story actually. This is what happened." Flashback: Tanin had taken him to the Dragon Mountains in order to have a party, and it was all for him. The reason being that today he was able to achieve his very first win against Borva. The sheer excitement radiating off of Issei was so overwhelming. He had finally, after so many years, achieved his very first win against such a formidable foe. And so, Tanin and everyone decided to throw a celebration in honor of his victory. You could see a myriad of different colored dragons coming together to join in this feast. They all sat and chatted comfortably with each other. It seemed like every dragon was present here. Some dragons were even resting on top of trees. It was quite a sight to see. Many would run in fright at seeing so many of these beasts of destruction so clustered together. In the middle of this huge group was Issei, who was the Dragon of Honor. Both he and Tanin took a seat together. both of them with their legs crossed, unlike the other dragons who were either on all fours, lying down, or even resting on top of trees. Issei had asked his sensei how he was sitting with his legs crossed. Issei was currently in his human form, so it was easy to do, but, in his dragon form, he found it absolutely uncomfortable to sit like a human, so he preferred staying on all fours when in his true form. So, he found it a surprise that Tanin was able to do so without discomfort. Tanin then proceeded to tell him that in the past, he too stood on all fours like all the other dragons, but since he became a devil, and integrated into their society, he started to learn to stand and sit like them. Of course, he had to transform his body structure in order to be able to accommodate for such a change, but now he is just used to it. He then started smelling something absolutely delicious. He turned to see many dragons bringing all sorts of food. Many of the larger dragons brought huge pieces of meat that was almost the size of their torso, and others brought a whole bunch of delicious dragon apples. Those were the best fruits a dragon could eat. When the food came, everyone started feasting. He could spot his parents off to the side. While they didn't really require to eat, they wanted to join in the festivities, so his father grabbed as much meat as he could. On the other hand, Ophis started devouring any dragon apples she could get her hands on. By now, it was no secret how his mother absolutely loved sweet things, and dragon apples were by far the sweetest and most delicious things she had ever eaten. There were some younglings who came by and offered her their own dragon apples, which made her very happy. However, she also wanted them to enjoy the fruits themselves, so she simply divided each apple in half and returned the other half to the younglings, who then sat next to her as they all ate the fruits together. After they finished eating, many of the dragons wanted to do a free-for-all brawl for fun. Great-red thought it was an excellent idea and told Issei that he should join in on the fun. Issei wasn't entirely sure until Tanin told him that this would be excellent training for him when dealing with multiple opponents. Issei eventually gave in and accepted as he transformed back into his dragon form and made his way onto the arena. Many of the dragons, seeing that Issei was going to participate, became very excited to be able to spar with him. Some of them considered it an honor to be able to fight a dragon god. With everyone in position, the brawl began. Issei just went straight for the nearest dragon who met him in combat. At first, everything was going well, until his instincts warned him of an incoming attack. He quickly sprinted backwards as he managed to dodge an incoming punch from another dragon. However, another dragon suddenly came into view mid-motion, and Issei could tell that there was no way he could dodge that blow, so he raised his arms and managed to block the blow, but the force behind it still caused him to blown backwards, albeit just a few feet. Issei soon got back on his feet and surveyed his surroundings, only to find that some of the other dragons were focused mainly on him. It seemed they planned to band together to take out the stronger foe first. It was a sound strategy and one that Issei completely had fallen for. When he heard that the bout was free for all, he simply assumed that every dragon would be out for themselves and all bouts would be one-on-one with only a single dragon standing, but he was utterly naive to think that. He finally understood what Tanin meant when he said learn how to deal with multiple opponents. At first, he didn't think much of it due to thinking this was a free-for-all, but now he could see how he had severely let his guard down, which led to the current situation. If this was a serious battle, he would have paid for with his life. Taking a deep breath to calm himself, he prepared his stance and prepared himself for the incoming assault. Seeing this, the other dragons continued their assault on Issei, however this time Issei was prepared. He managed to dodge the incoming strikes while counter-attacking. Ryu style at its finest. Eventually, he managed to take down all but one of his opponent. They were both breathing heavily as they both stared at each other. It lasted for a few seconds before the dragon smiled and acknowledged his defeat before falling to the ground. Issei looked around and saw that he was the last remaining dragon standing, and so brawl came to an end with his victory. Every other dragon roared in celebration. Their combined roar was so loud that it shook the ground, and he was pretty sure the entire underworld must have heard that despite the barrier being placed around them. Great-red continued boasting about his victory while Ophis was very happy. They continued the celebration until one drake asked Issei a certain question, and the question was what kind of title they should refer him as. This sparked an interesting debate amongst the drakes. Some suggested Dragon King or Dragon Emperor, but both titles seemed to be a bit too underwhelming considering he was a dragon god and nothing surpasses that. They kept listing different possible names until a certain female dragon proposed her own. How about calling him the Dragon Prince, since he is the son of both dragon gods and for all intents and purposes, they are kind of royalty, she suggested. Many believed that the name was unbefitting of a dragon god, but one voice suddenly became known. I like it. Ophis had stood up from her spot and immediately backed up the female drake's proposal. It was an amazing name, and it was true that he was her little prince, so having a title that matched it was perfect for her. Seeing that the dragon goddess approved of the name, every other dragon simply nodded and accepted the name as it continued to spread throughout the dragon territory. Issei, however, was an entirely different story. He wanted to be called something a lot cooler than Dragon Prince. He wanted a cool name like his parents. His mother was known as the Ouroboros, the Infinity Dragon God. His father was the Apocalypse Dragon God, or the True Dragon. His sensei was called the Blaze Meteor Dragon. Heck, even Borva's moniker of the Destroyer was super cool. The Dragon Prince made him sound like a sheltered weak kid. He was all but ready to deny it until he saw the look of excitement his mother had, and he didn't have the will to deny that. So with a heavy sigh he simply nodded in defeat. His father, seeing him act depressed, stepped forwards and rubbed his head, telling him not to worry and that he can have multiple titles if he so chooses. Great-red himself had multiple titles attributed to him even though he himself never chose them. It helped to uplift Issei's mood a bit as he went back to the celebration, as everyone now started celebrating over his new title. Flashback end, and that is pretty much the gist of it. Issei finished recounting the events that led to his moniker. Akeno paid close attention to every detail. Yufufu, I also like the title Dragon Price. It's cute. She admitted that she liked his title, causing Issei to pout. Well, I didn't want cute, I wanted a cool name like the others. Mom is the Ouroboros, my dad is the True Dragon, while Sensei is the Blaze Meteor Dragon King. Those are awesome title compared to Dragon Prince, which sounds lame. Issei complained like a child. Their talk had gone for so long, they didn't notice that they had already finished their food and the sun was already setting. Time sure flies when you are having fun indeed. Issei pointed behind Akeno, prompting her to turn around, and she was met with a beautiful view of the sunset. Not just that, but a sunset between the mountains which magnified the beauty in her eyes. The clouds were slowly shifting color to a darker red. It was absolutely a marvelous sight to behold, and she felt lucky to have been given the opportunity to see it. Not sure if there was a sun in the underworld, but if there was a moon, then surely there should be an artificial sun, right? Issei, on the other hand, was focused on another sight that exceeded the majestic beauty of the sunset. He was, of course, looking at Akeno, who was too busy watching the sunset to notice him looking at her. To him, she was the most beautiful thing in the world, and nothing could surpass her beauty in his eyes. Eventually the sun went down, making way for the moon as the night soon fell upon them, signaling the end of their date. Issei stood up from his seat and went over Akeno's side. I hope you enjoyed our date. There were a few unforeseen circumstances that I didn't plan for, but I still hope you had a good time, he said with a smile. She got up from her seat and embraced him. Of course I did, Issei-kun. Simply spending time with you means the world to me. I had an absolutely amazing time today. Thank you so much for preparing all of this. It was my pleasure. I would do anything for the second most important girl in my life, he joked, giving her a wink to let her know he was teasing. However, Akeno decided to play along. Arara, second you say. In that case, I better do something to bump me up to number 1 Issei-kun she whispered seductively in his ear, causing him to blush like crazy thinking about what she wanted to do. Akeno had definitely won this round. Boom boom boom, they both heard sudden noises as they turned their heads towards the source, only to see what seemed to be fireworks going off in the sky. Issei looked down the mountain, and with his enhanced vision he could spot all the dragons as well as his parents gathered together as they all shot their breaths to the sky and detonated it. It seems they were giving them fireworks, dragon style, which Issei found very touching. A myriad of different colored fireworks went off in the air, so Issei and Akeno decided to enjoy the festivities. He should thank them later. This was the perfect way to end the date, and he even rebuked himself internally for not having thought it. He was surprised that the fireworks were actually different colors, considering that all the dragon's breath attacks were bright orange. They must have used magic to alter it, or his father is using his power of illusion to make them appear different colors. Either way, he appreciated it. They kept watching the fireworks and soon noticed the finale approaching, considering the fireworks were getting bigger and louder. Eventually one final huge firework lit up in the sky. And Issei face-palmed. Of course, Dad couldn't help himself, could he? The final firework lit up and displayed his father's motorcycle for all to see. This certainly proves that it was his father's power at work. He lifted 3 fingers and started counting down 3, 2, 1 on cue. You stupid idiot. They all heard Ophis shouting in rage at Great-red before he took to the skies and started running away, or better yet flying away, from her. Ophis followed after him and was now chasing after him. Both of them were moving at speeds so fast that no one could see them. Even Issei had a hard time following them. All you could see in the sky was a crimson light being pursued by a black light all over the place, with Ophis shouting curses at Great-red. Though, it did make for a pretty light show. The dragons below started making bets among themselves. 5 dragon apples, says Ophis. Summer catches him, I'll bet 10 that he gets away, I'll take that. Akeno couldn't help but let out a bright laugh at the situation. It seemed that some things would never change, and she was glad for it. Indeed, the more things change, the more they also stay the same, as the saying goes. Uncle is still the same as always, she said, looking at Issei, who was still face-palming himself. Yes, he is, much to the dismay of my mother, as you can see. Issei pointed towards the 2 blurring lights in the sky. Yufufu, today has really been a fun and exciting day. Thank you, Issei, for such a wonderful time. She thanked him. An amazing date. My pleasure. Now let's get you back home. It is getting late. Issei said, though Akeno shook her head. You don't need to, Issei. I can simply teleport back home. She said, conjuring up a magic circle to show that she can do it. I know you can, but I would like to accompany my girlfriend back to her house. It is only proper. Besides, the last time I didn't accompany you back home, I ended up regretting it for a very, very long time, she heard him say in a sorrowful tone. She immediately understood what he was referring to and decided to accept in order to give him some peace of mind. All right then. Would you mind taking me home? Akeno said, holding out her hand. Issei smiled and took it. It would be my pleasure, he said before they both teleported out of the dragon's territory. They both teleported near Akeno's place and they decided to walk the rest of the distance. They both talked about how amazing their date was and how they were excited to do this again. Though Issei vowed to defeat her in video games the next time they went to the arcade, to which Akeno simply replied, a dragon can always dream, which was funny considering who his father was. Eventually, they arrived at the entrance to Akeno's home. Akeno told him that she was given this place by Rias and that her family servants come by every day to clean up the place. Thank you very much for the wonderful date, Issei. Akeno once again thanked Issei for the date. It was most likely one of the best days of her life and she was so happy to have spent it with Issei. The same could be said for the man himself. It was my pleasure. I also had a great time, though a large part of it was due to spending time with you, Akeno. Ara, such a sweet talker, she teased. However, it didn't stop the small blush forming on her face. Issei shrugged. Not really, just telling the truth. He rebutted. Dragons were honest creatures and hardly ever lied. It is not in their nature. Yufufu. Akeno enveloped her arms around his neck and brought him forward to give a kiss, which he reciprocated. After separating, they both smiled at each other and bid good night to one another. Have a good night, Akeno. You too, Issei. Oh, and before I forget, Rias would like all of us to gather at the club room tomorrow. Would you mind coming as well? Akeno asked him, to which he nodded his head. Of course. I'll see you tomorrow in the club room then. He gave a goodbye kiss before Akeno retreated back to her home. They both waved a final goodbye to each other before Issei teleported back home. Both extremely happy and pleased with how their date had gone.